Hey guys, tonight we're cracking open a long-lost Arctic diary. The kind of journal written by someone who thought walking toward the North Pole with tinned beef and optimism was a solid life choice. You trudge across a crunching white wasteland, your eyelashes crusted with ice, your breath curling like steam from an old kettle. In your mittened hand, a weathered leather-bound notebook, half frozen, half illegible, wholly ridiculous. It smells faintly of whale oil and broken dreams. You've made camp inside the remains of a snow shelter shaped like a collapsed wedding cake. Outside, the wind howls like a dramatic opera singer who didn't get the lead. Inside, you shuffle closer to a candle stub flickering beside the open diary. It's written in looping, almost apologetic handwriting, as if the writer half expected no one would ever read it. Joke's on him. You're here, possibly horizontal, possibly drooling on your pillow. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The diary begins, quaintly enough, January 2, temperature unknown. Thermometer cracked when I used it to hammer boots. You feel the cold just reading it. It's the kind of entry that tells you everything and nothing all at once. From here on out, the pages whisper of frostbitten resolve, maddening routines, and the strangely comforting dullness of repetitive hardship. The explorer never names himself. Anonymity, either by humility or frost-induced amnesia, but his voice, steady, wry, just sarcastic enough to survive the Arctic without throttling your tent mate. There's something hypnotic about his rhythm. Snow, soup, sleep, repeat. One page notes, fed dogs, then fed self, then fed fire. In that order, priorities remain intact. Another details a 12-hour debate over whether the ice was groaning or simply sighing. You suspect it was the crew projecting. Tonight, you sit at his side as he scratches entries into the pages, the ink freezing between sentences. He's calm, eerily so. This is not a man rattled by adversity. This is a man mildly annoyed that the soup won't stay unfrozen long enough to be disappointing. You read about their first camp, erected with great effort and mild bickering, a wall of snow reinforced with fur-lined logic. They call it Camp 1, which suggests hope of further camps. Ambitious, given that their boots are already disintegrating like puff pastry. But hope does odd things in cold places. The explorer mentions dreams where the sun returns and they all celebrate with tea and dry socks. Historians still argue whether these references were metaphorical, delusional, or just poetic license born from desperate optimism. A passing thought in the diary muses, there's something comforting about sameness, even if it's cold, bleak sameness. The body adapts, the mind hums. And you get that. There's a peace in knowing tomorrow will be exactly like today, minus a few ounces of dried carrot. The diary does not dramatize, it lulls, which is probably why you're already starting to feel that soft pull behind your eyes, the kind of quiet tiredness that comes when someone is calmly recounting how many times they rewrapped their frostbitten pinky. At the bottom of one page, there's a doodle of what looks like a dancing walrus. No context, just joy. Another entry describes nightfall, though who can say? The sun doesn't rise, but the moon occasionally blinks. You picture it, weeks without daylight, the only variation being cloud density and the grumpy level of the cook. There's a whisper of a joke in every sentence, a kind of private shrug that only someone surrounded by silence for too long can pull off. You get the sense this explorer wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just wanted to leave something behind that said, hey, I was here, I was cold, I coped. And now so are you. Not the cold part, hopefully, unless your blanket situation is tragic. But the rest it? The slow, rhythmic beat of a life boiled down to basic motions, described by a man who once tried to warm his boots over a candle and nearly set his sock on fire. You glance again at the cover of the diary, the leather worn, the corners dog-eared like it's been thumbed more than once, maybe even cuddled during particularly windy nights. You imagine the author curling around it, shielding the last warm memories of home inside these pages. He writes, "Wind continues, spirits steady. Wish I'd packed more jokes." Don't worry, explorer. We've got your back on that one. You awaken, if you were ever really asleep, still beside that sputtering candle and the open diary. Your breath fogs faintly in front of your face, and somewhere outside, the wind continues its endless hiss across the icy vastness. You blink, stretch a toe under your blanket, and return to the next entry, where the explorer begins, January 3. Packed the sledge. Repacked. Unpacked. Realized I packed nothing useful. Repacked again. Today, you and your anonymous Arctic companion attempt the noble, exhausting task of moving everything from nowhere to somewhere else. The sledge, a creaky wood and bone contraption, is both your savior and tormentor. It holds rations, shelter canvas, cooking gear, the navigator's flawed confidence, and, most importantly, 3 tins of jam no one is allowed to mention aloud. Packing it requires strategy. The heavy items must go low, but not too low or they'll crush the dry biscuits. The biscuits must be accessible, but not so accessible that the dogs steal them. The dogs, meanwhile, must be harnessed, but not too tightly or they plot your downfall. It's a process less logistical genius and more cold-induced Tetris panic. The diary confesses, "I may have shouted at a tin cup." The cup, to its credit, said nothing. You picture this moment, mittened hands fumbling, boots skidding, and a flurry of snowflakes as someone throws a woolen hat in frustration. The hat lands, quietly, judgmentally. Mainstream historical accounts often overlook these quieter irritations, the mundane ballet of early explorers grappling with straps and frozen buckles. Yet these moments are telling. These were people battling not just nature, but their own thumbs. Some scholars now speculate that the highest rate of early expedition injuries came from trying to unstick zippers using teeth. Not that zippers existed yet, but you get the idea. One crew member, affectionately referred to as Hat John, insists the kettle be packed last for emergency tea access. This decree is recorded in the margin, where the writer adds, "Hat John has spoken, so say we all." As the sledge is finally loaded, with at least 3 items guaranteed to be forgotten beneath the tarp, the group sets off. They don't go far, maybe half a mile. Turns out the snow today is more soupy meringue than solid crust. You trudge through it, each step stealing your breath and any fondness you had for your legs. The dogs pull, grumble, and occasionally stage silent protests by refusing to blink. After 2 hours, someone suggests turning back and repacking again. No one speaks for a full minute. And then, miraculously, movement, real progress. The world creaks, groans, and sighs, but the sledge glides across the hard-packed surface like a dream. Until it doesn't. You hit a pressure ridge, the kind that looks flat until you're flying and the diary flaps mid-air like an indignant seagull. In the next entry, scrawled a bit shakier than the last, your explorer notes, "Lost a spoon, gained humility. Also a bruise on knee shaped like Queen Victoria's profile. A lesser person might cry, but you admire the shape, note the regality of the bruise, and move on." Later, the diary lovingly describes a moment of pause, when the team sips lukewarm broth from dented mugs. The silence is nearly holy, broken only by someone whispering that they may have forgotten to bring extra mittens. The group stares. The moment is no longer holy. The dogs settle down as the sky darkens prematurely. Night falls like a velvet curtain pulled by a sleep-deprived stagehand. There's barely a sliver of moon, and the stars, when they're not blinking out behind clouds, seem smug about the whole ordeal. Someone attempts a camp song, something half-remembered from school, but gives up after the third line turns into coughing. You fall asleep that night to the familiar ache of muscles used just enough to be annoyed, but not enough to feel accomplished. The diary reads simply, Camp 2. Slightly tilted. One dog refuses to face east. Suspect protest. Historians still debate whether the dog behavior on these journeys held symbolic meaning, directional omens, or just grumpy canines with wind-chapped ears. There's no consensus, but many agree that Arctic dogs had stronger opinions than their handlers. As you lie down, bundled into layers of wool and regret, you can hear the faint rustle of the diary's pages. The wind flutters them like curious fingers flipping through a bedtime story. You close your eyes, picturing the explorer doing the same, murmuring good night not to his companions, but to the stove, the snow, and the one jam tin he stashed secretly in his sock. You wake up to a sound you can't quite place. Not the howling wind, that's a constant companion, but something softer, almost apologetic. The diary explains, January 4, dreamed of oranges. Woke to the tent apologizing via snowdrip. Snowdrip. The passive-aggressive reminder that your shelter is not, and never was, waterproof. Above your head, a patch of canvas has begun to sag with melting snow, forming a slow, glacial droplet aimed with sniper precision at your nose. You shift an inch to the left. It follows. You wonder, briefly, groggily, if the snow has developed a personality. You would not be surprised. The morning's routine begins the way it always does, with cold fingers fumbling for boots that feel like slabs of salted ice. Someone outside attempts a cheerful greeting. It comes out as Murph, which you take to mean, good morning, I hate everything, a sentiment you echo silently. Today's diary entries lean toward the dreamlike. The explorer seems to drift in and out of clarity, perhaps due to the numbing cold, or perhaps due to the creeping tedium of Arctic life. He writes, had a conversation with my breath this morning. It made more sense than Jenkins. Jenkins, bless him, is the team's navigator. His maps are detailed, hand-colored, and most critically, mostly theoretical. According to Jenkins, you are currently somewhere between large white expanse A and suspiciously flat shelf B. The explorer scribbles in the margin, Jenkins navigates with passion, not accuracy. You set off again, the sledge groaning in solidarity. The snow is deep, too deep, and every step feels like lifting your foot from wet cement. Still, progress is made. Incremental, deliberate, stubborn. The kind of progress that makes you question every life choice that led to this moment. At mid-March, the diary describes a moment of surreal beauty. The explorer halts, turns slowly, and writes, saw a halo around the sun, ice crystals refracted like a smug, glowing crown. Probably a weather omen, or just Tuesday. Halos, or parhelia, are common in the polar regions. Caused by light interacting with ice crystals suspended in the atmosphere, they create the illusion of multiple suns, or the illusion that you're finally losing it. Historians still argue whether these visions inspired folklore among early explorers, or just provided a handy excuse to turn around. The dogs stop often today, digging inexplicable holes in the snow. One unearths a spoon, possibly the missing one from yesterday. The team cheers. The spoon is passed around like a holy relic. Hat John says a few words. I suspect sarcasm, but the moment feels real. Later in the day, the explorer notes a change in the light. The sky dims in an odd way, more pewter than indigo, as if the clouds are considering a mutiny. You pause, squint upward, and wonder if the storm is quietly rehearsing behind the curtain. Dinner that night is a triumph of stubbornness over flavor. You gnaw on preserved mutton so dry it echoes. The diary remarks, "Food has entered its crunching phase. Teeth consider mutiny." Despite the unappetizing menu, there is comfort in its predictability. You know exactly what you're getting: disappointment, warmth, and a dash of salt. Afterward, a few crew members attempt story time, which involves semi-accurate retellings of Shakespeare via sock puppets. The diary calls it Hamlet in mittens. Jenkins plays all the roles. He's terrible. You laugh anyway. The night is colder, unforgiving. You bundle tighter, listening to the canvas flap and the snow whisper across the ice. Your breath curls upward and catches a glimmer of moonlight sneaking through a seam. The world outside is white on white, layered in shadows. The last note in the diary tonight reads, "Dreamed again of warmth, fireplace, oranges." The orange dream is recurring. Symbolic? Scurvy deficiency? I wonder if scurvy dreams have a flavor. Probably bitter, possibly sweet. And as you close your eyes again, nestled in your own version of Arctic quiet, be it a small bedroom, a dark dorm, or a cozy nook somewhere far warmer, you smile, because you know tomorrow the explorer will rise once more, curse the snow, forgive the dogs, and write something unexpectedly poetic about a falling icicle.
The diary begins again, with a line so resigned you feel it in your bones. January 5. Our map has become a moist suggestion. You nod sympathetically, rubbing your gloved fingers along the page's wrinkled edge. Jenkins' map, once a proud tapestry of cartographic ambition, now resembles a tea-stained napkin after a particularly weepy picnic. You start the morning in confusion, not because anything drastic has changed, but because nothing has. The horizon remains a featureless blanket of grayish white. The sun, or whatever passes for it here, is a hesitant glow, like someone holding a flashlight under a bedsheet. Visibility is laughable. The crew shuffles around camp in slow loops, muttering to themselves, possibly chasing their own footprints. It's all very calming in a deeply futile way. The explorer writes, "Spotted what appeared to be a tree, turned out to be Jenkins, upside down." You're not sure whether this is literal or poetic. Jenkins' spatial awareness is questionable at best. With visibility too poor to travel, the decision is made to stay put and attempt map maintenance. This involves spreading what's left of the map over a crate of biscuits and squinting at it like it owes you money. A debate ensues about which way is north. One man claims to feel it in his teeth. Another insists he saw a seagull. A third points to where the dogs are sleeping and announces they know. The dogs do not comment. There's a sketch in the margin, a crude compass rose surrounded by tiny scribbled question marks. It seems your explorer too was uncertain whether they were circling a fjord or simply circling themselves. Historians still argue whether these Arctic maps were tools of exploration or elaborate works of fiction with very cold plot twists. Jenkins defends his cartography by explaining that ink tends to smear at sub-zero temperatures. He then adds, unhelpfully, that some shrinkage of land masses should be expected due to emotional distortion. Hat John snorts and begins eating snow directly from his mitten. After several hours of arguing with the map, and by extension reality, the crew turns to a more productive pastime: sled repair. One runner has warped from last night's frostquake. You work together to straighten it using a combination of boiling water, optimism, and a truly inadvisable amount of kicking. The explorer notes, successfully rebent runner, possibly now curved in new and interesting directions. This, of course, leads to more debate. Jenkins suggests the new sledge angle might be aerodynamically provocative. You consider snowballing him in the face, but decide against it. Violence, like soup, must be carefully rationed. Later in the day, the storm lifts slightly, just enough to reveal more of the same. It's like someone cleaned your glasses only to show you a wall. Still, spirits rise. The dogs bark. Someone invents a new camp game called Guess That Distant Lump. The first lump is a shadow. The second turns out to be Jenkins again, somehow still upside down. The diary takes a more reflective turn by evening. Our explorer writes, "There is comfort in not knowing where you are. It allows one to pretend they have arrived." That line stays with you for a bit. It's odd, yes, but there's something soothing in the thought. Lost, yes, but purposefully so. Dinner is served, a charming blend of reconstituted dried peas and something politely labeled meat essence. The diary says, chewed thoughtfully, flavor was reminiscent of old socks soaked in ambition. No one complains. Complaining takes energy, and the food is at least warm, mostly. That night, the explorer records a brief weather note. Snow fell sideways. Dogs unimpressed. Jenkins whistled. Snow continued. You nestle deeper into your own blankets, hearing that whistling across time. It's off-key, insistent, and somehow comforting. It means everyone's still here, still trying, still arguing with a map and calling it progress. Outside, the world remains a mess of wind and lightless skies. Inside the tent, sleep creeps in slowly, like the cold, but warmer.
You stir to the sound of heavy breaths and low growls, not from the crew, but from something just outside the canvas. The diary is already open, fresh ink shimmering faintly. January 6th. Woke to large snuffling, not Jenkins, too articulate. You hold your breath. So does the diary's author, apparently. The entry continues in clipped phrases, as if written between glances. Confirmed. Polar bear. Large. Majestic. Disinterested. Possibly offended by our campfire arrangement. You peek through the flap. There it is. A hulking mound of white, nearly indistinguishable from the landscape until it blinks. It sniffs, paws the snow, and stares directly at the cooking pot. You wonder if it detects last night's rehydrated stew or the powdered eggs someone sneakily fed to the dogs. The explorer describes the bear's movements in near reverence. Moved like fog with teeth, left no prints, possibly floating. Scholars still debate whether Arctic bears really behave so eerily, or if isolation just lends everything a touch of the supernatural. Some argue early explorers saw bears as both threat and oracle, large white judges of human folly. Someone whispers, "Don't move." Another whispers back, "I wasn't planning to." A third voice, likely Jenkins, murmurs, "I think he likes me." The bear snorts and pads away, dignity intact. No one exhales until it disappears into the vastness, the only sign of its passage a faint paw print beside someone's lost mitten. The diary pauses to appreciate the moment. We are not alone out here, nor are we the most graceful. You laugh quietly. Truer words were never penned in frozen ink. Later, once the bear becomes a fading memory, and everyone agrees never to speak of Jenkins' attempt at bear diplomacy, the march continues. You're heading northwest, or at least you think you are. The compass is still undecided, and the map has now taken on the consistency of a steamed bun. Each step forward is a negotiation between willpower and knee-deep snow. The dogs lead stoically, their breath forming ghostly ribbons. Occasionally, one looks back as if to ask, "Really? Still going?" You give a slight nod. Yes, still going. Around midday, the landscape shifts, subtly, like a painting retilting on the wall. The flat whiteness develops contours, ridges, folds, faint mounds half buried under ice crust. The explorer notes spotted something hillish, perhaps a ridge, perhaps Jenkins' tent fell over again. It is indeed a ridge, but not one on any map, or at least not the version Jenkins packed, which may have been based more on optimism than topography. You climb it anyway. The view at the top is more white, but this white is different. You swear it's a brighter shade, tinged faintly with blue. Light dances across it in eerie shimmers, and the wind has a new voice, whistling, musical, almost like breath through a flute. The explorer is struck by the beauty, scribbling with more flourish than usual. The silence here is velvet. Even the snowflakes fall politely. It's a poetic line, nestled between mentions of foot blisters and a lost sock. Camp that evening is built with unusual care. The wind is mild, spirits are strangely high, as if the bear encounter gave everyone a jolt of perspective, and perhaps a lingering sense of being watched by elegant, enormous critics. The tent is pitched in a half-circle, the stove burns gently, and someone tells a joke about penguins before being reminded, yet again, that penguins are, regrettably, a southern phenomenon. Dinner is eaten slowly, a rare treat, hardtack with something resembling jam. The diary gushes, "Jam tin opened without incident. Emotional." I imagine the explorer savoring it, letting a single sticky spoonful linger on his tongue while the others pretend not to be jealous. That night, as you curl into your blankets, the explorer offers a final thought. Grateful today for the bear, for the jam, for a sky that changed its mind. And as your eyes begin to close, your mind full of pale ridges and musical wind, you smile. You survived the bear. You earned your jam. You belong here, if only for the moment.
Morning arrives with no fanfare. The sky remains the same smudged porcelain, the snow unbothered by your efforts to leave footprints in it. The explorer begins today's entry with a kind of resigned cheer. January 7. Sun failed to appear again. Respect the commitment. You stretch, creak, unzip, and emerge from the tent into what might as well be yesterday or 3 days ago. It's hard to tell. The crew moves like overbundled ghosts, their outlines softened by frost and routine. Jenkins mumbles something about it being Thursday. Someone gently corrects him. Wednesday-ish. Today's highlight, as promised by the diary, is darkness. Not sudden, scary darkness, but the slow, draping kind. Midwinter in the Arctic has no interest in lighting design. The sun gave up weeks ago. What remains is a smeared twilight, an eternal blue hour that's just dim enough to lose things and just bright enough to think you'll find them. The explorer scribbles, "Built a snow wall to block non-existent sunlight." It felt symbolic. Tasks continue, regardless. The sledge needs reshuffling again. It always does. You remove the kettle, the fire pan, the rattling bag of dog biscuits, only to repack them in the exact same order, but with more philosophical disappointment. One entry muses, "Repacking is our greatest talent. We are cartographic rearrangers of doom." You sense a cabin fever beginning to bloom, though it's the polite sort. No dramatic shouting, just a lot of dramatic sighing. One man sits on a crate for an hour, staring into space, gently chewing on an icicle like it owes him money. Jenkins takes to narrating the dog's internal thoughts aloud, most of which involve disdain and existential ennui.
Historians still argue whether prolonged polar darkness caused true shifts in the crew's behavior or simply exaggerated their quirks. Some journals describe full-blown snowball court trials to resolve disputes. Others note only quiet afternoons filled with tense whittling. Your diary falls somewhere in between, with a single line. Hat John declared himself timekeeper. We let him. Time has indeed become abstract. Without sunrise or sunset, you measure days by meals, journal entries, and the volume of your own thoughts. It's soothing, in a weird way, like floating through a monochrome dream with no real pressure to wake. In this timelessness, the group begins its first organized sport, sockball. It's exactly what it sounds like. Rolled wool, tossed at a snow mound, with points awarded based on sound effects and flair. The diary reports, I lost to Jenkins. He's banned from smugness for 48 hours. That evening, someone spots a faint glow on the horizon. Not the sun, don't be silly, but the moon. It's impossibly large, low and yellowed like an old library globe. The explorer sketches it in the margins with a tiny smiley face and the label Lunar Supervisor. The moonlight brings out colors you hadn't noticed before. The snow glistens faintly with blues and violets. The dogs appeared shadowed and regal. Even Jenkins looks majestic for a second before falling into a drift. Dinner is more festive than usual. There's still only powdered soup and dry biscuits, but someone sprinkles in a pinch of pepper. Spicy morale, the diary calls it. You eat slowly, letting the warmth sink deep into your bones. Then, quietly, the aurora appears. The green ribbons shimmer slowly at first, just peeking over the horizon, like they're not sure they're welcome. Then they rise, twist and ripple, delicate and mischievous. The explorer writes, Aurora returned, said nothing, danced anyway. You all stand silently watching it undulate across the sky. One dog howls, low and almost melodic. The wind pauses, briefly, almost respectfully. Jenkins mumbles something about ghost whales, and no one corrects him. Historians still debate whether aurora sightings influenced the psychological well-being of early explorers. Some believe they served as celestial reassurance, while others claim the glow was interpreted as a warning. Your diary offers no opinion, just a closing line for the night. We watched the sky sing, and then we slept. You do the same now too. Your breath slow, your limbs heavy, your thoughts drifting upward with the ribbons of light. The darkness is absolute. But tonight, it feels kind. You blink awake, still clutching the diary like a bedtime novel that got a little too immersive. The candle is burned down to a waxy stump, and frost laces the inside of the tent walls like nature's delicate graffiti. You stretch, yawn, and flip to the next page. The handwriting here is loopier than usual, drifting slightly sideways. January 8. Spoke too freely under the aurora. I suspect it told Jenkins my secrets. You chuckle softly. The explorer, ever the reluctant poet, seems shaken by the beauty of last night's display. The aurora's glow lingers in the air like a perfume memory, faint and teasing. Outside, the snow crunches with a reverence usually reserved for cathedrals. The world feels cleaner somehow, emptied out by light. Today, the diary focuses not on hardship, nor frostbite, nor bad biscuits, but confessions. It's unclear why. Perhaps the aurora did something, or perhaps the long stretch of dark silence has pushed the explorer into reflection mode. Either way, the entry unfolds like a string of journalistic therapy. I once stole a lemon from the quartermaster. I didn't eat it. I just held it and remembered summer. You pause, oddly touched. There's something deeply human in that citrus-scented admission. The explorer isn't proud of it, nor ashamed. It was a private rebellion. A tiny moment of stolen color in a world painted only in shades of white. Another line appears a few paragraphs down. I keep pretending the frost patterns on the tent wall are maps. Jenkins thinks they're flowers. Neither of us is wrong. Historians still argue whether these little tangents are signs of encroaching madness or merely creative survival strategies. Some say imagination was as essential as pemmican up here. Others argue that too much introspection could doom a crew faster than hunger. Your explorer seems to walk the line, with graceful wobbliness. In the afternoon, the sun, or at least its suggestion, returns for 15 glorious minutes. Just a smudge of peach light above the ridge. The entire crew gathers silently to bask in it like lizards. Jenkins insists on taking a shadow measurement with a fork. It ends poorly. The diary reads, "Sunlight, brief, but oh, she still knows our names." You feel warmth, real or imagined, just reading that. The team holds a small celebration that night, not for reaching a milestone or finding anything new, just for surviving another day without major catastrophe. Jenkins plays a sad little tune on his harmonica. The dogs howl along, off-key, but passionate. Someone reads aloud from a tiny battered book of poetry. The verses are clumsy and Victorian, and yet they make everyone smile. You imagine the words floating out of the tent, rising into the aurora-streaked sky, freezing there like breath caught mid-sigh. The explorer writes, "We are not meant to be here." And yet we are. That seems worthy of a toast. Later, after the poem and the harmonica and a not-quite-cooked biscuit, the diary dives into memory. The handwriting softens. My sister used to paint in yellow. Always yellow. She said it was the bravest color. You don't know what prompts this memory, but it lingers. Maybe it was the sun, or the candle, or the lemon. You feel a pang of longing that isn't even yours. The section closes on a final thought. I suspect none of us came here for fame. We came to be alone with something larger. And now that it's speaking, we don't quite know what to say back. You lie still for a while, listening to the silence beyond the tent. It's not emptiness. It's a kind of fullness that doesn't need noise. Your breath slows, your shoulders sink, and once again, the diary stays open beside you like a friend who doesn't mind if you doze off mid-sentence. The day begins with a very specific complaint. January 9. I bit into a pea. It bit back. You smirk, already picturing it, a sad, shriveled legume, soaked into toughness by months of cold and the barest hint of hot water. Breakfast in the Arctic isn't glamorous. It isn't even edible, really. It's more of a daily test in lowered expectations. Today's entry turns its full, frosty focus toward the crew's diet. Rations might be a generous word. You flip the page and see an ink blot shaped suspiciously like a ham. Wishful doodling? Maybe. The explorer notes, menu, rehydrated something. Suspect it was once lamb. Or a boot. Food here comes in tins and canvas bundles. Labels long since faded, most of them now read as vague suggestions. Jenkins has taken to guessing contents based on sound. He shakes a tin, listens thoughtfully, and announces beans, or possibly screws. Either way, they eat it. The diary catalogs their main staples with dry affection. There's pemmican, an early explorer favorite made from dried meat, fat, and the dreams of optimism. It tastes like spiced wax and refuses to melt, no matter how long you cook it. There's hardtack, those indestructible sea biscuits meant for chewing slowly and resenting thoroughly. And there's dried peas, which occasionally try to escape during meal prep. One entry features a diagram of their food rotation system. It's elaborate. 3 categories: edible, debatable, and strictly ceremonial. Hat John once ate from the ceremonial pile out of boredom. The dogs watched in horror. Still, they treat meals with reverence. There's something about the ritual of it. Boiling snow, assigning spoons, divvying rations, that creates a kind of shared humanity. The diary puts it best. We eat together because it reminds us we still have bodies and complaints. By midday, someone proposes a tasting event, a sort of culinary roulette using 5 unlabeled tins. The first yields what may have been carrots. The second is definitely some form of meat, with hair. The third is declared a dessert simply because it's not gray. The 4th tin is empty. Jenkins claims it's conceptual. The 5th is jam. Glorious, glistening jam. Raspberry, or at least something pretending convincingly. The mood lifts. There's actual cheering. The diary exclaims, "A red miracle, proof that good things rot slower in the cold." Each crew member receives 1 heaping spoonful. It's eaten in silence, eyes closed. One man weeps. The dogs look betrayed. Historians often gloss over the emotional weight of food on expeditions. They record the lists: flour, salt, beef extract, but not the effect a spoonful of sweetness can have on a group of frost-bitten souls. Some scholars now suggest that morale was most closely tied to the frequency of flavor incidents. Your explorer seems to agree. There's also tea. Not much, but enough to ration for moments of high tension or celebration. Jenkins is entrusted with the tin, mostly because he forgets where he hides things, which serves as an accidental security system. Evening approaches, and dinner is more subdued. The jam has set a high bar. Tonight, it's rehydrated turnips and a questionable mash. The diary simply writes, "A gray return to normalcy. Palate mourns." Afterwards, someone reads aloud from an old explorer's memoir, pausing frequently to scoff at the absurd optimism of it all. Phrases like "vigorous exercise kept spirits high" are met with unanimous snorts. Your explorer chimes in with a marginal note, "Liar, or else he packed better peas." Sleep comes heavy tonight, the kind born of calories earned the hard way. Outside, the wind hums like a lullaby written by a large, tired refrigerator. Inside, the warmth of one shared meal still lingers. You close your eyes, belly full of imagination, if not actual nutrition. And beside you, the diary rests open, its jam-smudged corners glowing faintly in the lantern light. The morning begins, as many do out here, with barking. But today, it's not the usual "where's breakfast" chorus from the dogs. It's more conspiratorial, urgent. The diary opens abruptly. January 10. Dogs have opinions, loud ones. You step outside to find the huskies gathered in a tight clump, all facing east, tails stiff, ears pointed, eyes narrowed. You follow their gaze. Nothing. Just the usual soup of fog and half-light. Still, something's different. The dogs feel it. You don't, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. The explorer writes, "They watch the ice. We watch them. Perhaps we're the ones on the leash." Today is all about them, your 4-legged colleagues, transporters, heaters, morale officers. The diary devotes itself lovingly, if sleepily, to their quirks. Each dog has a name, though half are nicknames that evolved naturally, like Crumpet for sitting on warm rations, and Sergeant Paws for disciplinary howls during rest stops. Jenkins insists his favorite, Milo, is a celestial navigator. "He always picks the left fork," Jenkins says, pointing towards absolutely nothing. You remain unconvinced, but to be fair, Milo has yet to lead them into any tragic sinkholes. The diary comments, "If dogs do dream, I suspect they dream of paths they've already memorized. We follow them because they're the only ones sure of where they're going. There's a long-standing debate among polar historians. Just how much did the dogs understand? Did they instinctively sense weather patterns? Did they memorize ice creeks? Or were they simply lucky, driven by scent and muscle memory? The explorer seems firmly in camp canine superiority. He writes, Jenkins consults a compass. The dogs squint at the clouds. The dogs are usually right. During today's short march, one dog refuses to move for 10 minutes. Not out of stubbornness, but out of what the team later agrees must have been snow-based protest. Eventually, a herring bribe works. Dignity is preserved. Barely. Later, when you stop for lunch, a term used loosely to describe sitting near soup, the dogs form a half circle and settle into the snow, tails curled, noses buried. They nap like it's an Olympic event. You marvel at the ease with which they shut off, even in biting cold. Meanwhile, you're 4 layers deep and still shivering. The explorer observes, they rest without guilt. That alone makes them superior to most humans I know. He's not wrong. You've never felt judged by a sleeping dog. Mid-afternoon brings a strange development. Sergeant Paws begins digging furiously at a patch of snow. Within moments, 2 others join in. You rush over, expecting perhaps a buried cachet or the long-lost second spoon. Instead, they uncover an old mitten. Sizable. Hand-stitched. Not one of yours. The diary notes the moment with some gravity. Artifact found. Woolen. Possibly from an earlier expedition, possibly ancient, possibly Jenkins. Jenkins insists it's not his. The dogs sniff it solemnly, then return to napping. No ghosts are summoned. Disappointment is mild. By early evening, the dogs are fed. They dine with gusto, some form of dried fish mush that smells like a haunted pantry. You envy their enthusiasm. One even burps with pride. The diary concludes, they eat with purpose. We eat with apologies. There's a light snow falling as the group sets up camp. One dog, the smallest, nicknamed Button, sneaks into the supply tent and curls up in a coil of rope. No one moves her. You'd think she owns the place. She might. The explorer leaves a final line before sleep. If we make it back, it will be because they allowed it. You drift off, thinking about paws crunching in snow, dog breath rising in the dark, and the faint sound of a harness jingling in the night. Loyal creatures, warm bodies, and maybe, just maybe, the best decision this expedition ever made. The diary opens with a sound, an unsettling, low rumble that echoes in your chest more than your ears. January 11. Heard the ice shift. Thought it was Jenkins' stomach. It wasn't. You sit up fast. The tent sways gently, but nothing else seems amiss. Outside, the crew stands silent, scanning the horizon. There's a stillness you haven't felt before, not the usual hush of snow, but something tense, stretched tight. The dogs pace in slow arcs, alert but quiet. Then it happens again, a deep, resonant crack. It rolls beneath your feet like thunder underwater. Not immediate danger, but close enough to be thrilling in a very sleepy, detached sort of way. The explorer writes, icequake, or ice groan. Either way, nature's indigestion. Welcome to the next grand adventure, trying to sleep on a frozen sheet of grumpy water. Historians still argue whether these ice tremors signaled true danger or just the usual drama of glaciers shifting. Some journals describe entire camps sinking. Others report nothing more than coffee sloshed and nerves frayed. Your explorer's take? A shrug, followed by a doodle of a very unimpressed dog on a floating ice cube. Today becomes a game of observation. Is the ground vibrating? Are those new cracks or old ones with better lighting? Jenkins insists the creaks follow a pattern. Hat John begins naming them like thunderclaps. That was Mildred, very bassy. The explorer notes, Camp 3 has begun to list slightly westward. This may be due to the wind or guilt. You spend the day reinforcing the tent with what could generously be called engineering. More snow blocks, some canvas reinforcements, and one truly questionable plank supported by a spoon. You step back, admire the work, and realize it's leaning like a tired uncle at a wedding. The crew moves gingerly. Everything becomes a negotiation with gravity. You kneel with care. You sneeze softly. Even Jenkins, who usually bounds about like a golden retriever in boots, walks with the reverence of someone defusing jam jars. Midday, a sharp snap echoes from somewhere northeast. You freeze. So do the dogs. One low growl rolls across the team like a shared breath. But nothing breaks. Nothing falls. Just the occasional crumble of ice from the tent roof. Lunch is hasty and silent. Frozen biscuits, aggressively lukewarm broth, and an apple slice someone preserved in a sock. The diary states, the apple was a triumph. Firm, fragrant, fractionally thawed, worth every woolly note. Afterward, the explorer muses on the psychology of noise. We crave silence until it arrives. Then we crave whispers, even if they're ominous. As evening settles, the creaks grow fainter. The worst seems to have passed, or perhaps the ice is simply waiting for everyone to relax again. Jenkins suggests singing a lullaby to the glacier. Hat John recommends not tempting fate. You side with John. The tent is adjusted slightly east, just in case. Your bedroll feels a little slopey, but at this point, so does everything. You lie still, wrapped tight, and listen. Not to silence, but to breath. Dog breath. Human breath. Wind. The explorer's final line today reads, the ice may rumble, but we're still here. Still snoring, still dreaming, good enough. And just like that, your own breath slows to match. The rumble fades, the snow settles, and the cold seems just a little less sharp. There's a strange sound drifting through the tent this morning. Not wind, not the dogs, not Jenkins reciting inaccurate Latin again. It's humming, soft and tuneless, barely audible. You push the tent flap open and catch the culprit mid-verse. Hat John, balancing on a snow crate, is humming what sounds like a sea shanty rewritten by someone who's only ever seen the sea in a painting. You stand silently, letting the rhythms settle into your bones. For a moment, even the dogs look vaguely musical. The diary captures it simply. January 12. Someone sang. Everyone listened. We didn't even hate it. It turns out, today's theme is sound. Not the spine-rattling creaks of ice, but the gentler things. The little noises that remind you you're not floating through a silent void. We began the morning with music. Shaky, off-key, but sincere, the explorer writes. Someone drummed on a tin cup. Jenkins clapped on the ones and threes. Disaster, but comforting. You learn that singing is a rare treat out here, not because it's forbidden, but because it feels oddly luxurious. The air is so thin and cold it steals your breath faster than a joke at Jenkins's expense. Still, for a few minutes, the camp feels like a theater. A really chilly, underfunded theater with snow for curtains and dogs for critics. By midday, the rhythm continues. The explorer records an attempt at coordinated boot stomping to create morale. The result is several twisted ankles and one dog barking in time. It's officially declared Camp Music Day, a holiday no one requested, but everyone now fiercely defends. We're not musically gifted, the diary reads, but we are committed. That's something.
One of the crew pulls out a harmonica, a little bent, a little rusty. The explorer admits it's been used more for scraping ice than making music. Still, when Jenkins gives it a go, it lets out a surprisingly sweet note. Then another. Then a squeak that scares a dog into a snowbank. Historians still debate the role of music in polar expeditions. Some argue it was critical to mental health, citing journals full of lyrics, marching songs, and lullabies. Others dismiss it as anecdotal, a footnote in the long, frozen tale. Your explorer? Firmly in favor. Songs don't feed you or warm you, but they remind you that your voice still works, that you're not invisible. After lunch, which today is a particularly stubborn biscuit and something described as pork adjacent, someone proposes a concert. The Arctic Philharmonic, as they dub it. Instruments, 1 harmonica, 3 spoons, a tin cup, and a dog collar that jingles slightly when shaken rhythmically. The result is something. Not quite music, not quite noise. Somewhere between the two, layered with giggles and the occasional off-color verse from Jenkins. The explorer's entry captures the moment. We sang. We clapped. We annoyed the dogs. We were humans again. Evening falls gently. The sky outside brushed with deepening gray. No aurora tonight, just the thick velvet of unbroken cloud. The harmonica sits beside the stove now, slightly warmer, slightly prouder. The spoons are returned to their dinner duties with mild protest. As the crew winds down, someone hums again, very softly. This time, no one joins. It's a lullaby now, a memory wrapped in breath. The explorer's last note of the day reads, "There's music in quiet, if you listen close enough. Even the snow has a rhythm." And as you lie back, your ears pick up things you hadn't noticed before. The muffled crunch of shifting boots, the sigh of sleeping dogs, the wind curling under the canvas like a whispered chorus line. It's not silence. It's a sleepy symphony. And you're part of it now.
You wake up to find Jenkins hunched over the compass, squinting at it like it just insulted his lineage. His breath curls in little annoyed puffs, fogging the glass and his mood. The diary begins with, January 13, compass still spinning. Jenkins suspects sabotage. We suspect Jenkins. It's a curious problem, one that's persisted for several days now but is only just becoming undeniable. The compass needle no longer seems interested in pointing north, or anywhere consistently. Some mornings, it favors east. By lunch, it wobbles like it's in a philosophical crisis. Today, the expedition becomes less about where to go and more about what to believe. The explorer writes, "We are adrift in certainty. The only true north is Jenkins' delusion." The crew gathers around the tiny brass instrument as if expecting it to explain itself. The dogs are disinterested, curled up in polite disregard. Hat John suggests a magnetic anomaly. Jenkins suggests polar interference. Someone suggests that they all need more sleep. Historians still argue over magnetic variation near the poles. It's well known now, of course, that compasses become increasingly unreliable the closer you get to magnetic north, but in this era, with limited instruments and lots of guesswork, it was enough to make a man question reality, and perhaps, in Jenkins' case, his hat size. You attempt to test. 3 compasses, 2 weathered maps, and a spoon balanced on a string. The results are inconclusive, unless you count emotional damage. The spoon, however, does briefly point toward the biscuit tin. You log this under important findings. The diary details the various coping strategies. Hat John insists on navigating by gut. Jenkins constructs a sundial at noon in a snowstorm. One man refuses to believe in compasses at all anymore, claiming he prefers emotional directions. By midday, the debate has turned slightly theological. The explorer writes, "We've entered a philosophical expedition, no longer seeking land, but purpose and tea." There's a subtle humor laced through the page, part frustration, part frostbite-induced poetry. You get the sense the explorer has stopped worrying about direction in the traditional sense. Instead, he observes the sky, the clouds, the color of snow, the way dogs gather in arcs when unsure. Later that day, the clouds part just enough to let in a sliver of milky sunlight. The shadows it casts are soft and crooked, stretching eastward like whispers. The explorer takes it as a sign. Jenkins claims it's the universe apologizing. The team moves slowly, relying on instinct more than anything measurable. They follow the terrain, the wind, and once a particularly motivated squirrel track, which ends disappointingly in a snowbank. The dogs seem pleased, or at least nonchalant. One of them, Milo, trots with confidence. Jenkins follows him as if he's Moses parting the snow. Dinner is subdued, but warm. The explorer notes, biscuits do, mostly water, slightly biscuit, palate unsure. As everyone beds down, the compass is left outside on a crate, both punishment and test. Jenkins swears he heard it clicking under the moonlight. No one investigates. The last line in the diary reads, "Perhaps direction is overrated. Still, I miss knowing where we're going, even if it's wrong." You close your eyes, letting that thought melt into your own stillness. There's a strange comfort in not knowing when the only thing to do is keep walking, trusting the snow, the dogs, and each other. And maybe, just maybe, your own slightly spinning compass of sleepy instincts. The diary opens today with a rather cryptic statement. January 14. A spoon is missing. Again. Suspicions mount. Morale wobbles. You sigh. You were hoping for a quiet day, but nothing stirs expedition drama quite like missing utensils. A single spoon may seem trivial in warmer, less hungry circumstances. Out here, it's a declaration of war, betrayal, or at the very least, poor organizational skills. The camp is in uproar, or as much uproar as you can muster beneath 4 layers of wool and the crushing weight of polar ennui. Hat John suggests a full inventory. Jenkins claims he saw the spoon last in Button the sled dog's possession. Button denies the allegation by sleeping through the accusation. The explorer's tone stays level, but faintly amused. We have narrowed the suspects to Jenkins, wind, or divine punishment. In that order. You stage a semi-formal inquiry. Everyone empties their pockets, their bedrolls, even their boots. No spoon. There is, however, a rogue sock full of turnip peelings, which sparks a new, completely unrelated round of accusations. The sock's owner refuses to be named. Historians often overlook the psychological weight of small items during polar expeditions. While journals obsess over frostbite and navigation, it's often the misplacement of a knife or spoon that truly frays a group's mental seams. One fringe account from a Russian expedition claims a chess piece went missing and caused 3 months of silent animosity. Your explorer seems to agree with this theory. He writes, "We fear the ice and respect the weather, but we truly dread each other's habits." The dogs, once again, are suspected. Milo is briefly interrogated with a biscuit bribe. He reveals nothing. Jenkins constructs a spoon trap involving string, a fish head, and an elaborate pulley. It catches his own hand within minutes. The real turning point arrives mid-afternoon when one crew member, attempting to adjust the stove, discovers the spoon nestled comfortably behind a bent kettle. Not stolen, not lost, just overlooked. There is a full 10 seconds of silence before anyone speaks, then laughter, not raucous, but slow and relieving, like steam escaping after days of pressure. The diary notes, "The spoon returns. Jenkins weeps quietly. Peace restored, if temporarily." Dinner is celebratory. biscuit hash, a smidge of butter someone forgot they had, and actual chunks of what might be preserved carrot. The explorer declares, "Victory stew. Lumpy, but proud." Later, as the tent warms slightly from bodies and laughter, the crew unwinds. Someone sketches a cartoon of the spoon caper, casting Jenkins as the villain in a cape of cutlery. He accepts the role graciously. The explorer becomes reflective. Conflict is inevitable when 5 men share a tent the size of a canoe. But resolution, real resolution, comes not from explanation, but from stew. Outside, the wind howls gently, but stays distant. Inside, the tension of the day dissolves. The spoon, now scrubbed, polished, and slightly bent, sits in the center of the table like a small, silly monument. As you drift off, you consider the simplicity of the lesson. Sometimes it's not about who took what. It's about the grace of forgiving. The chaos that comes from living too close, too long, too cold. The last line in the diary tonight is brief but perfect. 1 spoon, 10 tempers, 17 theories. A good day. You smile in the dark. Peace by Teaspoon.
The entry today begins with a flourish. January 15. Sent a message in a bottle. The bottle was cold, the message colder. You raise an eyebrow. Finally, something romantic, something epic. A message cast to the elements, perhaps a final note to the world? A grand philosophical meditation? Well, not exactly. It turns out the bottle in question was a squat green medicine flask, half frozen and mostly dented. The message was hastily written on the back of a ration label using something between ink and regret. The contents? A rambling, slightly sarcastic note to whoever finds this, including a warning about the unreliable compass, a weather report, and a helpful sketch of Jenkins looking suspicious. The explorer confesses, "I was bored. Also, out of jam. Felt like a dramatic gesture." There's no ceremony to the launching. The team hikes to a break in the ice near a slow-moving lead of open water. The flask is dropped, unceremoniously, and immediately floats into a snowdrift like it's reconsidering everything. One of the dogs watches with what might be disdain. Still, the explorer seems proud. We cast our story to the sea. She ignored us. Fair. Historians still debate the utility of these message-in-a-bottle moments during expeditions. Some were genuine distress calls, others morale-boosting theater. A few were elaborate jokes. In this case, it seems to have been all 3. The note even includes a postscript. If this reaches you, we hope you are warm. If you're not, we suggest heading south, rapidly. With the bottle gone, the team returns to camp feeling oddly satisfied. Jenkins claims the message will find its way to a Norwegian fishing village, be read aloud in a crowded tavern, and become legend. Hat John bets a biscuit it sinks within the hour. No one wins, but the act itself becomes the highlight of the week. Back in camp, spirits are high. Someone suggests writing another message, this time in verse. You spend a solid 20 minutes trying to rhyme pemmican with feminine before giving up and eating half the ink biscuit. The explorer takes to documenting other forgotten items for potential future messages. An old mitten, left behind intentionally. A cracked tin cup, commemorative. And a drawing Jenkins made of a polar ghost that looks suspiciously like a cabbage. The diary becomes introspective. There's something comforting about the idea of being found, even if it's just your handwriting. The rest of the day is slow. Snow falls in gentle, persistent flakes, covering tracks, tents, and tempers. The world turns soft at the edges. You shovel only enough to make space for the fire pit and resign the rest to nature's artistic choices. Dinner includes a soup that everyone agrees was too textured, possibly due to dried lentils reanimating in a strange way. Jenkins claimed one blinked at him. That night, someone reads the message aloud again. Everyone chuckles, even the dogs, probably. It becomes part of the expedition lore. The final diary line reads, "If someone finds that bottle a century from now, they'll know we were here and that we were tired, hungry, and slightly absurd." You drift off imagining it, some distant beach, a curious child, a green flask half buried in sand, the words still legible. We were here. We were cold. We had jokes. And with that, you sleep a little warmer.
The next page of the diary is smudged in places, likely from a gloved thumb or a mitten that doubled as a napkin. The writing begins slow, a little weary. January 16. Today, the world was wide, white, and wonderfully unhelpful. You glance outside and understand exactly what he means. The view is indistinguishable in all directions, an endless flatness, textured only by the soft hissing sound of wind over snow. It's not a storm. It's not a clear day either. It's just white, as far as your eyes can squint. The horizon, he continues, was missing, presumed hidden. Today is a March day, not because you know where you're going, but because staying still too long feels like becoming part of the landscape. The dogs are restless, pacing in spirals. Jenkins points confidently to the east, which is later revealed to be the exact spot the sun set yesterday. No one corrects him immediately. You need the optimism. The sled creaks under its usual weight of gear, hopes, and frozen sausages. The dogs move with determination, though occasionally one stops to sniff what looks like a different kind of snow. Everyone pretends this means something. The explorer writes, "We walk not toward anything, but away from everything familiar. It's still progress." As you trudge forward, the monotony becomes oddly soothing. Your feet fall into the rhythm of soft crunches, your breath steady and visible. It's the kind of walking that empties the mind. After an hour, you forget what your hands feel like. After 2, you forget what doubt feels like. Jenkins hums the same 3-note tune for miles. Hat John threatens poetic retaliation. The explorer contributes by chanting biscuit ingredients under his breath. Flour, lard, guilt, salt. Historians often gloss over the psychological toll of the Arctic's sameness. While the cold is obvious, the true challenge is the repetition, the echo of your own thoughts in snowdrift form. Some journals refer to it as ice silence, a state where the world feels paused. Some called it peace, others called it madness. Your explorer? He seems to have found something between the two. When the world refuses to change, you stop waiting for surprises. That's when the snow begins to speak. Around midday, you reach a slightly raised patch of snow. A ridge, perhaps, or a lie told by light. Jenkins proclaims it Mount Victory. It turns out to be 2 feet tall. Still, you climb it. The view from the top, more white, but you cheer anyway. One of the dogs yawns with theatrical indifference. Lunch is eaten standing up. Dried meat, a few nuts, and snow melted with the heat of your own breath. You try not to think about that last part. By early evening, camp is pitched next to a lump of ice that vaguely resembles a reclining walrus. You name it Larry. Jenkins insists it blinks. It doesn't. The explorer reflects. Even in nothingness, we name things. A horizon, a hill, a friend made of ice. It helps. Dinner is surprisingly hearty. Someone finds an emergency tin of lentils, and though they taste faintly metallic, the crew declares it bold. The diary notes, "We toasted to Larry. He said nothing. Classic Larry." As darkness rolls in, barely distinguishable from the day, the team wraps in silence.
There's nothing left to see and no reason to look. Only the low snore of the dogs and the faint flap of the tent roof. The explorer's final line tonight reads, "The world may stretch forever, but we have our feet, our fire, and a frozen hill with a name. That's enough." You drift off, wrapped in the soft understanding that even monotony has meaning, and even the endless white has warmth if you're willing to imagine it.
This morning's entry begins with a simple, elegant truth. January 17. My socks have formed a political alliance against me. You don't need much imagination to understand. You feel it the moment you move, your feet cold and stiff, encased in wool that long ago gave up the fight. The socks, if they can still be called that, are less garments now and more philosophical statements. Lumpy, rigid, and oddly persuasive in their argument that you shouldn't be walking today. The explorer elaborates. Each toe has chosen exile. The heel, defiant, has escaped entirely. Today becomes a quiet study in daily discomforts, those tiny indignities that accumulate like frost in your eyebrows. There's no catastrophe, no blizzard or bear, just the ongoing drip of frozen inconvenience. You begin by attempting to thaw your boots with body heat. This involves a mildly awkward huddle that no one acknowledges. Jenkins tries to toast his socks over the stove and nearly ignites one. It's unclear whether this is a mishap or mercy. Breakfast is cold tea and something that used to be porridge. The dogs look at it, then at you, then back at the porridge. They decline, with feeling. The explorer turns philosophical. It's strange what becomes unbearable. Not the hunger, not the cold, but the sound of wet wool. Historians rarely linger on the intimate suffering of early explorers, the chafing straps, the perpetual damp, the way one's eyebrows freeze to the inside of a balaclava. These are small miseries, but they shape memory in sharper ways than grand disasters ever could. Jenkins spends the morning restitching his mittens with thread made from mystery fibers. When asked where it came from, he shrugs and says, "You don't want to know." You agree not to. Hat John has taken to swearing softly, rhythmically, like a monk reciting frostbitten mantras. The diary reads, "We've entered the liturgical phase of discomfort. Amen." In the afternoon, someone suggests a cleaning hour. It lasts 7 minutes. There's only so much you can scrub when everything is either frozen solid or fused with your outerwear. One man discovers a second spoon tangled in his scarf. The team erupts in exaggerated celebration. There's dancing. It's clumsy. The dogs remain unimpressed. Dinner is, again, soup-like. No one asks what it started as. The diary reads, "Flavor is secondary. Texture is tertiary. Warmth is king." Afterward, the explorer turns his attention back to the socks, now stiff as parchment and hanging near the fire in tragic loops. He contemplates sewing them into mittens or using them as bargaining chips for better boots. He writes, "These socks have outlived optimism, but not necessity." There's something incredibly human about this moment. An exhausted man staring at the shapeless remains of wool and thread, finding meaning in their persistence. The socks may be mutinous, but they're still here. So is he. So are you. As night falls, the wind begins to pick up again. Not angry, just insistent. It pushes gently against the canvas as if asking to come in. The tent holds. The stove flickers. The dogs begin to snore. The final line of the day? My feet are still frozen, but at least now they match my soul. You smile into the darkness. Somewhere, deep under layers of wool and frost and laughter, your toes twitch. And even if they never forgive you, you know they'll carry you again tomorrow.
You awaken to a crunch. Not underfoot, but inside your coat. You sit up, confused, and discover that sometime in the night, a biscuit,
One of those infamously immortal hardtacks slipped into your collar and settled like a pebble of betrayal against your spine. The diary sympathizes. January 18. Slept on a biscuit. Dreamed of betrayal. Woke wiser. It's the kind of day that starts with a whimper, not a bang. The sky remains a blank, flat bowl of gray. No storm, no sunlight, just the steady presence of cold in its purest, most passive-aggressive form. The Explorer notes, weather unchanged, mood mixed, biscuits plotting. The team is quiet this morning, not from gloom exactly, but from what the Explorer calls ambient fatigue. It's the sort of exhaustion that comes not from action, but from expectation. You expect the snow. You expect the cold, and you expect your tea to freeze halfway to your mouth. So when it does, no one bothers to comment. It's simply Tuesday. Probably. Jenkins tries to liven the mood by declaring it Fancy Hat Day. His own is adorned with a sprig of pine he found frozen to his sock. The dogs judge him silently. You march slowly today. The ground is uneven, but not treacherous. There's a slope that feels gentler than it looks, and everyone slips on it equally, which feels democratic. The diary writes, "We fell in unison. It was strangely bonding." Jenkins said, "Timber." Historians often marvel at the endurance of polar explorers, at the grand gestures of survival. But your explorer is more interested in the small moments, the shared grunts when lifting the sledge, the mutual shoulder nudges during lunch, the way everyone silently agrees to pretend Jenkins' pine hat looks dignified. Around midday, you encounter something genuinely remarkable, a line of small wooden stakes peeking through the snow. A marker trail? A previous expedition's leftovers? No one knows. The diary describes it with wonder. Tiny ghosts of past wanderers. They left breadcrumbs. We followed them, hungry for proof. The stakes lead nowhere in particular, veering left, then doubling back in a disorienting spiral. Eventually, they simply stop. The crew stares at the final stake in silence. Hat John taps it, nods once, and mutters, "Respect." The explorer doesn't comment further, but you can tell it moved him. By late afternoon, spirits rise slightly, thanks to a game called What This Snow Lump Used to Be. Popular guesses include a broken tent, a sleeping seal, Jenkins' dignity. Jenkins votes for ancient burial site. He is swiftly overruled. Dinner is a mixture of beans and mystery meat. It is served warmish, and received with the enthusiasm of a mid-level tax refund. The diary says, flavor, ambitious. Texture, confused. Satisfaction, begrudgingly present. After dinner, someone shares a story from home. It's meandering, a little mumbled, and possibly made up, but no one cares. The sound of another human voice telling a tale, any tale, is worth its weight in pemmican. The explorer closes the day with a thought that lingers. We walk the same snow every day, but we become different with each step. Outside, the sky darkens slowly. You settle into your blanket, now suspicious of future biscuits, and listen to the creaks and sighs of tired canvas. There's nothing new, nothing dramatic, just quiet hearts continuing forward.
You wake to the soft shuffle of snow being cleared. Not a full dig-out, just the kind of scraping that says, we don't really need to see where we're going, just enough not to fall into something again. The diary greets you with January 19. Cleared camp of unnecessary snow. All snow deemed unnecessary. Today's theme is repetition. Not just the slow march of boots through slush, but the kind of déjà vu that comes when you realize you've tied the same rope to the same sled handle for the 15th time this week, and yet it feels newly frustrating every time. The explorer writes, time has become a soup, thin, reheated, still oddly filling. After breakfast, which features yesterday's biscuits, now even more evolved into fossils,
The team performs what Hat John calls routine survival. This includes checking dog paws, rechecking sled bindings, then triple-checking the map which, frankly, gave up last Tuesday. Jenkins insists they're back on track. The compass says maybe. The dogs refuse to comment. You set off across another blindingly blank landscape, the world reduced to crunches and breaths. It's the kind of march where no one talks unless absolutely necessary. A silence not born of tension, but of efficiency. Words require energy, and sarcasm burns calories. The explorer reflects. Snow has become background noise. White hum, like an old radio between stations. The dogs lead confidently, if lazily. At one point, Button veers off the trail for no apparent reason. The crew follows. 10 minutes later, you're back at your own footprints. Jenkins calls it a navigational Mobius loop. The explorer calls it Tuesday again. Historians note that some expeditions drew faces in the snow or gave names to patches of ice just to break the mental loop. Your team, never one to be left behind, starts assigning personalities to snowdrifts. The tall, sloped one? Gerald. The squat one with the suspicious dent? Carol. You greet them both like old friends. Around midday, it begins to snow. Not aggressively, just enough to blur everything into a watercolor painting. Visibility drops. Hat John starts humming again, but even Jenkins doesn't join in. The explorer writes, "We disappear softly. First our shadows, then our outlines, then our will to identify landmarks. Despite the monotony, there's a strange peace to it. You realize, mid-step, that this is what endurance looks like. Not drama, not crisis, but just continuing. One foot, then the next, until the next thing you know, it's time to pitch camp again." Dinner is heated in the same pot that's served as both stew pan and foot warmer. The stew tastes vaguely of sock. You eat it anyway. Everyone does. The explorer leaves a note beside his bowl. The flavor of survival is beige. We've learned to season it with laughter. Tonight, someone proposes a game of memory, recalling details from days that have blurred into one another. When did the compass stop behaving? When was the last time someone found a raisin? What was that dream Jenkins had about the snow forming a conga line? Laughter comes gently, not loud, just enough to fill the tent with breath and a reminder you're still people, not just bundled silhouettes on a schedule. The final line in the diary tonight reads, "The snow may repeat itself, but so do we, and that too is survival." You tuck the diary under your arm and curl deeper into your blankets. Outside, the snow continues its quiet descent. You don't need to see anything new tonight. You only need to wake again tomorrow.
You're roused this morning not by cold or creaks, but by an argument. A polite one, of course. Whispered, muted by wool scarves and heavy breath. The kind of squabble that could only happen after weeks in close quarters with the same 5 faces. The diary begins dryly. January 20. Jenkins believes it's Friday. Hat John insists it's Thursday. We've achieved temporal gridlock. The rest of the crew seems content to let the debate swirl. Time, after all, has been sliding sideways for a while now. Without a proper sun, each day blends into the next like a long sigh. You consider voting Wednesday, just to keep things lively. The explorer reflects, "We mark days with biscuits, not calendars, and the biscuits are unreliable." It's a rest day, not by schedule, but by necessity. The wind has turned mean, pushing against the tents like a bored giant poking a snow globe. The dogs burrow deep into their shelters. No one's particularly motivated to challenge the weather's mood. So, instead, the team cleans gear, stitches gloves, and tells stories. Jenkins launches into an epic about his great-grandfather allegedly surviving a shipwreck by befriending a walrus. Hatjohn listens with the expression of someone deeply skeptical but too bored to interrupt. You sip lukewarm tea and listen. It's not about truth, it's about pacing, pauses, the glint in Jenkins' eye as he invents maritime wisdom on the fly. The explorer comments, "The story shifts each telling, but the walrus always nods sagely. I admire that consistency." Later, the crew organizes a sock audit. Everyone lays out their remaining pairs. There is chaos. Nothing matches. One sock is frozen into a perfect cone. Another has gone mysteriously missing since last Thursday or Friday, depending on which camp you've joined. The explorer tries to log the sock count, but gives up halfway through and doodles a sad face with thermal earmuffs. Lunch is improvised. Someone finds a tin of dried fruit hiding in the sled's storage. The raisins are reanimated with warm water and questionable optimism. The taste is present. The diary notes, "We dined like royalty who fell on hard times." Jenkins named each raisin before eating it. As the wind rattles the camp, the conversation turns philosophical. What will you all do first when you return? Eat something fresh? Hear a voice not muffled by scarf? Step into a room that doesn't have frost on the ceiling? The explorer's thoughts drift in the margins. Will the city feel loud? Will warm air feel suspicious? Will we miss the quiet? You wonder too. Right now, it's hard to picture a world where walls aren't canvas and every surface isn't slightly damp. But that world is still out there, and the thought of it, distant though it is, helps. Before bed, someone finds a scrap of newspaper used as insulation. It's a page of advertisements, corsets, chocolates, a fancy new bicycle for sale. Everyone huddles around like it's sacred scripture. The explorer writes, "We worshipped the idea of velvet cake for a solid 7 minutes. The night ends with a group reading of the best ad voice. Jenkins wins solely from managing to pronounce corset with what he insists was historical accuracy. The dogs disagree. As everyone settles in, the tent warms slightly from shared breath and the memory of imaginary dessert. The explorer concludes, "We are fraying gently, like wool, like time, but we're still whole enough to laugh. For now, that's plenty." And you drift off, not caring what day it is, just that it passed with soft voices, warm hands, and stories that made the tent feel a little less small.
The day begins in silence. Not the usual sleepy silence of early morning, but a deeper one, intentional. Even the dogs are quiet, ears perked toward the ridge, noses twitching at something unseen. The diary opens with January 21. The wind stopped. So did we. Entirely. It's eerie at first. Without the ever-present howl, you hear things that aren't supposed to be heard out here. Your own heart thumping in your ears, the creak of your bones as you stretch, the whisper of snow shifting itself for no one in particular. Jenkins speaks first. "It's too quiet," he mutters, which is exactly the sort of thing someone says before something deeply cinematic and unfortunate happens. Nothing does, of course, but the moment lingers. The explorer records it simply, "Nature held its breath. We considered doing the same." Despite the quiet, the team moves slowly through camp tasks. The stove is coaxed into life with great ceremony. Breakfast is served warm, blessedly warm, and nearly free of ice chips. Everyone eats facing outward, as if expecting the snow itself to stir. Later, With the weather holding strangely still, someone suggests climbing a nearby ridge, just to see. It isn't far, but feels miles away with every step. You climb together, boots crunching, poles pressing into snow that seems reluctant to support you. The dogs follow in pairs, tongues lolling, surprisingly energized. Maybe they sense something too. At the top, the view stretches. A proper view. Not just more of the same, but ridges, patterns in the snow, distant lines where the ice folds upon itself like a forgotten map. It's beautiful in a way that doesn't try to impress. Quiet beauty. The kind that feels earned. The diary describes it as a horizon we didn't deserve, but received anyway. Like forgiveness. Hat John says nothing. Jenkins whistles low. Someone pretends not to cry. You stay up there longer than necessary. The air is dry, and even though it stings your nose, you breathe deeper than usual. It's the kind of air that makes you remember being alive is a miracle, however mildly inconvenient it may feel when your mittens are frozen solid. Before descending, someone marks the snow with a stick and a mitten tied to it, a flag of sorts. Not for anyone else, just for yourselves. A reminder that you saw this place. You saw this day. Back in camp, spirits are lifted. Even the soup tastes slightly less tragic. Someone proposes building a snow chair. Jenkins builds a full throne, complete with a spoon scepter. The dogs immediately sit on it. Jenkins yields with grace. Dinner includes the last of the preserved ham bits. The diary describes it as a smoky whisper of civilization. Someone scrapes the pan clean with bread hard enough to chip enamel. Worth it. That evening, the explorer pens a small poem. Clumsy, half-rhymed, but heartfelt. He includes it in full. The wind is gone. The snow holds still. We stand together against the chill. No path ahead, yet still we try, beneath a pale and waiting sky. It's not art, not really, but it doesn't need to be. The last line of the diary reads, "If tomorrow howls again, at least we had today." I think we needed it. You rest tonight with lungs a little fuller, limbs a little warmer, and a memory newly etched, not of hardship, but of calm, of space, of a ridge and a mitten flag fluttering in nothing but hope. The wind returns with all the subtlety of a late guest slamming the tent flap at 3 a.m. You're jolted awake by canvas snapping above your head. The stove's weak glow flickers against the rattling walls. Outside, snow hisses against everything with renewed purpose. The dogs shuffle nervously, noses tucked, tails twitching. The diary greets the day without surprise. January 22. The wind came back, took our peace and our gloves. A gust bursts through the tiny gap between flap and snow wall. Jenkins yelps. Hat John curses creatively into his scarf. Button the sled dog relocates into someone's sleeping bag and refuses to negotiate. It's a storm, not a full blizzard, but what the explorer calls a yeller. Not loud enough to panic, but just chatty enough to keep everyone irritated. He notes, snow sideways, wind dramatic, Jenkins philosophical, dogs annoyed, everything normal again. Movement outside is impossible, so the crew stays bundled inside the tent, stewing in their own breath and too many layers. Conversations loop like poorly spliced film reels. Same topics, same jokes, same groans.
Hat John retells a story from 6 days ago and no one stops him. The diary writes, "There are no new stories, only colder retellings." Jenkins attempts indoor recreation, suggesting sled poker, using biscuit crumbs and bent nails as currency. It ends with a dispute about whether the Jack of Ladles counts as a face card. The diary declares it a draw. Lunch is haphazard, lukewarm broth passed around in rotation. Someone finds a fig in the bottom of their ration bag and is briefly elevated to minor godhood. The explorer notes, "A fig in this white hell? Heresy. Delicious heresy." Outside, the storm intensifies, pelting the tent in waves. You listen as the fabric flaps and tightens, like a living thing shivering against the cold. The dogs bark once, then go silent. Even they have realized that noise accomplishes nothing here. As daylight fades, if it ever began, the stove is lit again. It sputters, groans, then breathes heat like an old dragon waking. Everyone huddles near it, boots drying in half rotations, socks splayed out like surrender flags. Someone starts humming. Jenkins joins, then the rest. It's off-key, familiar, and entirely without melody. But it fills the space between tent poles and settles nerves in the way only a shared human effort can do. The explorer reflects, a storm outside, harmony inside. We cling to rhythm when the world howls. Evening arrives with no new threats, just the same persistent wind, like a neighbor playing sad bagpipes through a wall of snow. Someone reads a page from an old almanac they've been using as fire starter kindling. It's about crop cycles in Devon. Everyone listens as if it's prophecy. Dinner is quieter. The last of the cheese ration is passed around like communion. It squeaks slightly. No one cares. A holy wedge, the diary calls it, softened by reverence and possibly mold. Before bed, you peek out of the tent. The sky is a roaring, shifting smear. There's beauty in it somewhere, hidden behind the hiss, but you're content not to search tonight. The explorer's last words, "The wind reminded us we are small. The stove reminded us we are warm. I think the stove wins." You sleep with the knowledge that you're wrapped in fabric, noise, and the shared understanding that not every day needs to move forward. Some just need to be endured, together. The storm hasn't stopped. If anything, it's found a second wind, literally. The tent rocks like a cradle with performance anxiety. It seems protesting with every gust. You don't bother checking the time. In this white blank world, time is just a rumor anyway. The diary begins with a line that reads like a sigh. January 23. Wind still speaking. We've stopped listening. The explorer is in a mood today. Not despairing, just distant. Detached, in that way people get when the outside world insists on narrating your thoughts with too much volume. There is no line between weather and identity anymore. We are the storm's house guests now. The day is spent indoors, again, tent-bound. Everyone is careful to shift weight slowly, lest someone tip over the only functioning stove or disturb the socks that have been suspended like primitive wind chimes. Hat John tries to play a game involving dried beans in empty tins. No one understands the rules. Jenkins wins, somehow. The dogs have stopped reacting to human antics altogether. One curls on the stove's fuel box, blissfully unaware of his betrayal of fire safety. The explorer observes, "We are no longer annoyed, just sediment." Around noon, the tent nearly collapses. A rogue gust pulls a corner guy line from its mooring. Everyone springs to action in that slow, frozen way that still feels miraculous. Gloves half on, boots jammed onto half-thawed feet. Jenkins crawls out with a hammer and a line of poetry on his lips.
He returns 10 minutes later, covered in snow, and declaring the storm a bit flirtatious. Historians still debate the psychological impact of prolonged storms on polar crews. Some accounts suggest anxiety, others report oddly euphoric moods. Your explorer seems to embrace the absurd. We cannot leave, we cannot change, so we narrate badly. During the afternoon lull, someone digs into the comfort box, a crate of leftover odds and ends meant to spark joy. It contains a frayed deck of cards, a melted candle, a single red mitten, and, miraculously, a half-finished letter home. The letter is unsigned, possibly from a previous expedition, possibly from someone who never got to send it. You read it aloud. The words are plain, full of longing and offhand warmth. Tell Mother the jam was worth it. Tell Harold the dogs are still the better men. Everyone goes quiet after that, even Jenkins. Lunch is shared without comment. A thin stew laced with biscuit crumbs and something greenish that no one identifies. You eat slowly. Each bite tastes like familiarity, if not flavor. Later, as the wind howls again and the stove flickers like it might quit out of spite, Hat John starts whittling something from a spare tent peg. No one asks what. It becomes a collective act of silent creativity. The explorer notes, "We do not ask, we observe, we let people make shapes out of boredom." Dinner is the same as lunch, only rearranged. You pretend it's different. Everyone does. As night folds over the tent like a second canvas, the explorer closes the day with this. The storm is louder, but we are softer. That seems fair. You lie still, listening to the wind trying to tell you something you don't need to know. Beneath the layers, beneath the noise, there is warmth. Not from the stove, but from each other. And tonight, that's enough.
Sometime in the night, the wind gave up. You notice it immediately, not because of its absence, but because of what you can hear instead. The subtle snoring of a nearby crew member, the steady drip of condensation from the tent roof, the faint rustle of a dog repositioning in its dreams. The diary greets this truce with cautious optimism. January 24. The world has exhaled. We remain upright, mostly. Outside, it's quiet. Not unnaturally so, just blessedly still. The snow no longer drives sideways. It drapes. The sky, for the first time in days, shows variation. Pale gray light ripples through thinning clouds, and for a moment there's even a glimmer of something amber near the horizon. Jenkins proclaims it the ghost of a sunrise. The explorer sketches it with numb fingers and labels the drawing simply almost. The crew stirs to life in stages. Someone stretches with a noise that sounds like a folding chair giving up. Another immediately brews something approximating tea. It tastes of smoke and relief. Hat John ventures outside first, peering around like he expects the storm to yell "Gotcha!" and resume. But all is calm. The dogs emerge shortly after, stretching like fur-clad accordions. One of them rolls gleefully in a drift. You can't help but smile. Today becomes a day of repairs. The storm, while not catastrophic, has taken its toll. A tent seam is frayed, a sled runner is cracked. One of the snow shovels has turned into a very short snow paddle. Jenkins suggests calling it art. The explorer describes the process in tired but affectionate detail. We mend things now not to improve, but to continue. Function over elegance. Always.
You melt snow, stitch fabric, replace boot bindings, and re-secure gear. Every act is small but meaningful. Fixing something, anything, is a rebellion against entropy. There's even time for grooming. Not in the glamorous sense, but enough to comb frost from beards and trim the one toenail that started to become a community concern. Someone finds a mirror shard and stares into it like an archaeologist discovering their own eyebrows. Jenkins shaves his chin into what he calls a navigational goatee. The dogs remain unimpressed. Lunch is enjoyed outside for the first time in a while. It's still freezing, but the absence of wind makes it feel 10 degrees warmer. That's Arctic math. -5 feels like a spa day compared to -20 with wind chill. The explorer writes, "Today the cold invited us to sit. So we did." You form a semicircle, backs to the breeze, bowls of stew cradled like treasure. Jenkins tells a story about a stormless day during his childhood and is promptly accused of fabrication. He does not deny it. Later in the afternoon, you take a short walk, not for navigation, just movement. The snow is packed tight beneath your boots, and the quiet is so deep it buzzes. The explorer notes, "The crunch of snow beneath our feet sounded like a lullaby written in boots." You find nothing new, no distant outpost, no cave, but you do find a large drift shaped exactly like a lounging walrus. Again. This one gets named Martin. A solemn nod is given. Tradition upheld. That evening, the team eats a slightly more elaborate dinner. A tiny chunk of butter is found and ceremoniously added to the pot. The resulting stew tastes identical to the previous night's, but is deemed velvety by consensus. The explorer adds, "The placebo effect of butter cannot be overstated." As you settle in for the night, the explorer turns sentimental. We've survived the storm, and in doing so, remembered that peace exists. Not often, not loudly, but here. You lie back, letting your mind stretch across the canvas of calm. No howling winds, no flying canvas, just the occasional sigh, the soft thump of a dog's tail, the warm, dry weight of survival pressing gently on your chest, like an extra blanket.
The morning arrives not with a bang, but with a blink. For the first time in weeks, light doesn't just suggest itself. It shows up, taps you politely on the cheek, and announces, "I'm here now, if you don't mind." The diary is awestruck. January 25. The sun appeared. Entirely. We stared at it like fools. You crawl from the tent and squint. It's faint, low on the horizon, but unmistakable. A golden smudge with just enough heat in it to make your eyes sting. You're not alone, everyone's outside. Jackets flapping open, cheeks bare to the sky, dogs sprawled belly up in full sun worship mode. Jenkins attempts a toast with lukewarm tea. Hat John removes his hat for the first time since week 2. The moment is reverent, ridiculous, and real. The explorer writes, "We stood in silence. We soaked it in. The dogs looked smug." Today becomes a celebration, not officially, not planned, just small acts of joy in response to the light. Someone cleans their boots. Another whistles while tying rope. You string up wet socks on a line like festive flags. Even the biscuits are warmed slightly near the stove and served with enthusiasm. The dogs are giddy. They dig for sport, roll excessively, and one tries to carry a snowshoe around like a prize. You let them. Why not? The explorer muses, "Sunlight does not cure hunger. It does not mend boots, but it reminds us we have faces." There's a decision to move camp, not because you must, but because the weather allows it. The sled is loaded with less grumbling than usual.
The snow is firm underfoot, packed with yesterday's wind and today's optimism. The trail ahead seems clearer, not in direction, but in attitude. Historians note that the first full sun after weeks of darkness had significant psychological effect. One Norwegian journal from a 19th century expedition includes a sketch of men hugging snowmen. Your explorer offers a more restrained approach, but you can feel the lift in his tone. As you glide across the snow, shadows appear. Real ones, sharp-edged and dramatic. They sprawl behind boots and sleds, giving everything form again. It's absurd how comforting a shadow can be. Lunch is brief, dried meat and hardtack, chased with melted snow. Still, the warmth of the sun on your back transforms it. The diary notes, "Everything tasted like light today, even the crackers." In the afternoon, Jenkins finds a cluster of snow-covered rocks. He insists they resemble a sundial and attempts to tell time with it. He's wrong by several hours, but no one corrects him. It's enough to pretend. Hat John sings. It's unclear whether it's a real song or one he's inventing on the spot. The chorus includes the words "butter snow" and "toe regrets." Jenkins harmonizes, the dogs leave. Camp is pitched beside a ridge that glows orange in the setting light. You dig out the stove and set it firmly against the windless slope. It burns hot and steady, its flame less a necessity tonight than a comfort. Dinner is better than usual. Extra broth, warm rations, even a split tin of preserved apples. They're mushy and taste like tin, but your crew treats them like a banquet. The explorer writes, "We feasted like emperors who forgot what luxury was. It was glorious." As darkness creeps in, slowly, not abruptly this time, you sit in a circle watching the last rays fade behind Martin, the ever-patient walrus-shaped snowdrift. He's glowing gold at the edges. You half expect him to bow. The final line tonight reads, "Light came back, we forgave the world, and maybe ourselves." You sleep easy, full of light, laughter, and the comfort of remembering that the sun, like hope, sometimes returns when you least expect it.
The morning begins with a new sensation, warmth. Not tropical, not exactly comfortable, but enough to convince your eyelashes not to freeze together when you blink. A miracle. The diary opens with cautious delight. January 26th. Woke up sweating. Thought I was dying. Turns out it's just mild weather. You sit up and realize your breath isn't curling quite as heavily. Your sleeping bag no longer feels like an icy sarcophagus, and the frost on the tent walls has retreated to a tasteful shimmer rather than full winter wallpaper. Jenkins announces this is short-sleeve weather. Everyone ignores him, except Hat John, who threatens to actually cut the sleeves off his thermal layer. He does not. The dogs are playful again, truly playful. You watch them race around the tent, kicking up sprays of powdery snow like they've been saving energy for this exact day. Button leaps into a drift and emerges with someone's sock, triumphant. The sock's owner simply nods in appreciation. The explorer's tone today is light. Morale, high. Wind, cooperative. Biscuit count, controversial. The plan is to move again, not far, but enough to feel like progress. The sled is packed with ease. The map, creasing at every fold, now reads less like a relic and more like a set of gentle suggestions. Jenkins has added his own notes in the margins, including drawings of suspicious hills and what may or may not be a narwhal. The march is smooth. The snow crusts underfoot but doesn't collapse. The sun follows, gentle and golden, casting long shadows that make the dogs look like proud statues. You find yourself humming, a tune without name or rhythm. Jenkins joins. His version includes throat singing. The explorer notes, "Music returned to our steps, even if it was Jenkins-flavored." Midday brings a small marvel, a patch of frost-rimed moss clinging to a rocky outcrop. It's green. Green! You all gather around it like pilgrims. Hat John swears he smells grass. Jenkins cries a little. The dogs try to eat it. The explorer writes, "Life in miniature, a stubborn smear of spring on winter's canvas." Lunch is celebratory, at least in tone. Dried meat, warm broth, and the last 2 dried apples split 6 ways. The diary reads, "Rationing has taught us sharing, also mild bitterness, but mostly sharing." The real gift of the day, though, is rest in warmth. When you set camp, you lie back in the snow, face to the sky, and feel not cold, not wind, but light. And that light seeps into you, slowly, as if apologizing for taking so long to return. Jenkins uses his parka as a pillow and declares this luxury camping. Hat John mutters something about aristocratic delusions and then eats a spoonful of powdered cocoa straight from the packet. No one stops him. As the sun dips low, you sit around the stove again, no longer huddled, just comfortably nearby. The tent smells faintly of melting snow and old cheese. You've grown fond of it. The explorer reflects, "There is no joy like comfort returning after absence. It's the kind that fills cracks you forgot were there." Dinner includes the final corner of that questionable cheddar someone swore they lost in week 1. It's fuzzy. It's shared anyway. Flavor, defiant. Mood, euphoric, the diary notes. Before sleep, Jenkins reads from his notebook, a collection of half-thoughts, travel notes, and what he claims are explorer haikus. One goes, "Wind howls, socks protest, sun hides, stew forgets its name, dogs still know the way." The crew claps politely. One dog howls, possibly in appreciation, probably not. The final line of the explorer's entry reads, "A warm day is not redemption, but it is a reminder that redemption exists." And as your eyes close, your body warmed from the inside and out, you exhale softly. The sun may leave again tomorrow, but today, it was here, and so were you.
You wake to an unusual sound. Laughter. Not the polite, breath-fogged chuckle that's common around here, but full, open laughter. The kind that turns heads and causes snow to tremble gently from the tent roof. The diary opens mid-story. January 27. Jenkins fell into a snow pit he himself dug yesterday. Karma works fast in the Arctic. You emerge from the tent to see Jenkins standing waist-deep in a perfectly symmetrical hole. He looks more insulted than injured. The dogs sit in a row, watching as if attending a theater performance. One yawns dramatically. The explorer notes, "A good fall is better than a good joke. We were gifted both today." The sun has returned, peeking over the ridge with the same tentative attitude it had yesterday. You take it as a sign. It's safe to resume exploration, or at least a long, lazy walk with pretensions of purpose. Breakfast is something resembling porridge, thick enough to be considered structural. It holds its shape when scooped. Jenkins molds his into a rough snowman, which becomes the camp mascot for the next few hours, before being tragically consumed by a hungry dog. Today's objective: investigate a distant ridge the explorer's been eyeing since the sky cleared. It's not on any map, of course. Jenkins insists it's a glacial anomaly. Hat John calls it probably just another pile of disappointment. Still, the team sets out. The march is easy. Flatter terrain, cooperative snow, and the wind has, for now, agreed to keep its commentary to a minimum. The dogs are lively. You feel lighter too, even though your pack hasn't changed. The explorer reflects,
There is something powerful about walking toward the unknown on a good day, even if you expect to be underwhelmed. As you near the ridge, something unexpected happens. You find tracks. Not yours, not the dog's, but faint indentations leading across the snow in a curious looping pattern. They're old, wind-worn, but clearly not natural. The crew clusters around. Jenkins kneels, pokes a gloved finger into one of the tracks. He says, "Boot print." Hat John frowns. "Small boot." The dogs sniff but seem uninterested. The explorer records it plainly. Proof of others. Not long ago, not ancient, not us. Strangely comforting. Historians love this stuff. Evidence of overlapping expeditions, near meetings, missed chances. You wonder who they were, where they were headed, whether they're warm now, laughing in some tent far away, or gone. Jenkins launches into a theory involving a breakaway Finnish team with mystical tendencies. You let him talk. The story is more nourishing than any ration. By late afternoon, you reach the top of the ridge. It isn't grand, just a gentle hump of ice and earth, but the view is wide. You can see far now, glimmering folds of snowfields, distant peaks hinting on the horizon, a sky smudged with streaks of orange and lavender. The explorer writes, "The earth lifted us just enough to feel infinite, then handed us back our silence." Camp is made on the lee side, wind tucked neatly behind the slope. The dogs dig in and curl up quickly, satisfied with their day's efforts. Dinner includes warmed beans and the very last square of chocolate, hidden in the bottom of a sock since the first week. It's divided precisely into 5 slices. Each crew member holds theirs for a moment before eating it, like a communion. The diary notes, "It tasted of memory, of kindness hoarded and released at the right time." As night falls, you sit in silence, watching the soft glow linger in the sky. Someone hums a tune from 2 weeks ago. No one joins in. That's fine. It's not a song for company, it's a song for this. The final line for the night reads, "We found footprints. We left new ones." That's how stories continue. You curl into your sleeping bag with the image of those faint tracks still fresh in your mind. Others were here. You are here. And one day, someone else may see your prints in the snow and wonder. This morning arrives in pastel. The sun, shy and gold-rimmed, filters through a veil of thin mist, casting everything in the kind of soft light that makes even Jenkins look poetic. For a moment, the snow doesn't sparkle, it glows. The diary opens gently. January 28. The world blushed. We stared until it faded. You wake slowly, stretching your legs and realizing, astonishingly, that you don't ache. The ground beneath your bedding seems to have lost a bit of its bite. The stove purrs contentedly, and someone's already boiled snow for tea. Today feels kind. Breakfast is meager, scraps of oatcake, lukewarm broth, but nobody complains. Jenkins finds a pinch of cinnamon in the supply bag and adds it ceremonially. The resulting tea is barely changed, but morale leaps several degrees. The explorer muses, "Spices were invented by the gods to disguise suffering. I worship accordingly." Today is a maintenance day. You're not going anywhere, and no one suggests it.
Instead, everyone falls into quiet, individual rhythms, mending packs, brushing dogs, counting matches like they're gold coins. Hat John shaves for the first time in 3 weeks. You barely recognize him. The explorer sketches his face in the margin, a proud egg with eyebrows. Jenkins declares it Personal Admin Day. No one stops him from printing an honorary schedule on the back of a pemmican wrapper. There's a lightness to the silence today. It isn't weighted with fatigue or tension. It's casual, companionable. You catch yourself smiling for no reason and don't bother to stop. The explorer takes inventory. We have fewer biscuits than stories, more frostbite than spoons, but spirits remain oddly intact. Around midday, someone sets up a laundry line across the sled poles. Half-frozen socks flutter in the breeze like peace offerings to the polar sky. Jenkins pens a haiku in their honor. Frozen socks waltz proud, wind does not judge your holes, just air dries your regrets. The dogs enjoy a rare long nap, sprawled belly up beside the tents. One snores, another kicks in its sleep, dreaming perhaps of warmer shores or chasing a particularly smug snow goose. You spend the afternoon reorganizing the supply crates, part practical, part therapy. There's a strange comfort in arranging things into neat piles, edible, nearly edible, emotional support rations. Someone finds a piece of honey candy melted into a corner of a tin. It's divided into 6 minuscule flakes and distributed with the gravity of sacred ritual. The diary observes, honey tastes like memory, brief, sweet, gone too quickly. As dusk creeps in, though here dusk is a process more than a moment, you all gather around the stove again. The soup is thinner than usual, but laced with finely chopped something that might be onion. It's incredible. Jenkins tries to start a conversation about metaphysics. Hat John counters with a fart and a shrug. The explorer writes, "We rejected philosophy in favor of the observable and soup." After dinner, someone reads a page of an old newspaper used to line a gearbox. It's a theater review from London, dated over a year ago. The performance? A dramatic reimagining of the Odyssey. You sit in silence, listening as ancient lines echo in a tent of frost-bitten socks. The explorer's last line tonight lingers with you. Even Odysseus, for all his storms and monsters, just wanted to come home. Us too, but not yet. You lie back, breathing in the faint scent of melted honey and wool. There's nowhere else to be, and for once, that feels like a luxury.
You wake in darkness, but not the kind that weighs. This darkness is soft, velvety. The wind has gone elsewhere. The snow is still. Even the tent seems to be sleeping, its canvas unmoving, unbothered. The diary opens quietly. January 29. The cold was patient today. We matched it. There's no urgency in the camp. No alarms, no frost-nipped panic. Just slow movements. Boots pulled on gently. Tea brewed without muttering. Dogs stretching in tandem. It's as if everyone agreed, silently, to speak softer and blink slower. Breakfast is plain. Dry oat biscuit, a sliver of salty meat, but it's eaten gratefully. Jenkins tries to tell a joke, but forgets the punchline halfway through and ends up laughing at himself. Everyone joins in, not because it's funny, but because it feels good. The explorer notes, laughter makes a fine broth when food is scarce. Today's task is simple. Do just enough. The sled needs minor adjustments. Someone rewraps the lantern and spare cloth to keep the wick dry. You take time to repack a kit bag, twice, just because it feels satisfying to place things in order.
Hat John discovers a hole in the bottom of his pack and spends 2 hours patching it, humming tunelessly while doing so. The rest of the crew avoids asking how long he's been shedding lentils across the Arctic. The dogs remain in good spirits, padding around the tents like they've appointed themselves guardians of the perimeter. One of them, Milo, unearths a frozen glove buried near the stove trench. It's not anyone's, probably left by an earlier team. You clean it, place it in a dry pocket, a quiet relic. The explorer writes, "Strangers passed this way. They left behind warmth in the shape of a glove." Lunch is shared on a tarp under a pale sky. The snow glints like powdered glass. Jenkins passes around a canteen of diluted tea and offers a toast to the visible horizon. Everyone drinks. Midday brings a strange mood, a mix of nostalgia and stillness. You're not ready to leave, but you're already missing the place, even if it's just a slope, a sled, and a tent held together with frozen string and stubbornness. The diary grows reflective. There is comfort in this small pocket of effort. It asks nothing more than showing up. In the afternoon, you sit beside a drift, legs stretched, watching shadows grow long and thin. The wind never arrives. Time passes slowly, and for once, you let it. Someone starts reading from a torn notebook filled with old folk tales. The story is about a fox who outwits winter by pretending to be a pine tree. The moral is unclear, but the telling is excellent. Jenkins suggests adapting it into a puppet show. The dog's veto, with stares. Dinner is creative. A stew composed of 4 previous meals, combined into one pot and renamed Legacy Soup. It's thicker than it should be, but it's hot, and no one complains. The explorer notes, "It tasted like every lesson we've learned in broth form." Afterward, you sit in silence as night descends. No fanfare, no flickering aurora tonight, just the slow fading of light, replaced by the hush of cold settling in. The final line of the diary reads, "Stillness is a kind of progress. We've moved inward today, and far." You lie back in your sleeping bag, hands tucked beneath your chin, breath even. There's nothing to do, nowhere to be, but here. And that is enough.
You wake in layers of gray. Gray tent walls, gray sky, gray snow piled like draped fabric beyond the flap. There's a quiet to the air, not the kind that feels empty, but the kind that feels full, like the room just after someone tells a secret. The diary begins, January 30. The snow returned, soft, thoughtful. We welcomed it like an old mistake. Flakes drift slowly from above, fat and lazy, as if unsure they really want to land. You sip morning tea while watching them swirl, and for a moment you forget the cold. Jenkins claims he sees shapes in the falling snow. One flake, he insists, resembled a violin. Another looked suspiciously like a pork chop. The explorer remarks, "We do not hallucinate out of madness here, but out of entertainment." Camp duties proceed gently. The dogs are fed first, as always. Their fur is speckled with snow, which they ignore. You watch Button dig a shallow hole, spin in a tight circle, and curl into it like a croissant of resilience. She dreams audibly. Today is meant to be a writing day. At least that's how the Keem frames it. Journals are pulled out, pens are coaxed back to life with gentle shaking and warm palms. Jenkins sharpens a pencil with a spoon. It works, somehow. The explorer writes extensively today, more than usual. You catch snippets as the pages turn. I miss silence that doesn't hum with snow. I miss bread that gives a little when bitten. I miss the sound of a door. You recognize these thoughts. You've had them too. Not out loud, maybe not even fully formed, but they've been there. In the crinkles around your eyes, in the way you trace shapes into frost, in how long you hold on to your tea before drinking it.
Lunch is sparse: dry bread, cheese rind, and a spoonful of preserved cabbage that smells like sadness and ambition. Still, it goes down warm. The diary notes, "Meals here are not for flavor. They are for continuity." Afterward, you all sit in the quiet, each in your own patch of snow. Jenkins begins reading from his field novel, an absurdist romance set in a lighthouse. He's on chapter 7. The lighthouse is now haunted. Hatjohn is invested. One of the dogs groans dramatically during a romantic monologue. The snow thickens by mid-afternoon, blanketing your camp in soft layers. You take turns brushing it from the sleds, from the tent edges, from each other's shoulders. No words are exchanged, just a nod, a smile, a thumb jabbed gently into someone's padded ribs. The explorer reflects, "In a white world, kindness must be active. It is never implied." Dinner is minimal, just broth and rehydrated lentils, but a tiny bottle of pepper is discovered and used like treasure. Everyone coughs. Everyone cheers. As night folds in, the sky continues to snow. No drama, no wind, just the persistent whisper of falling. You lie back and watch the flakes descend, their paths lazy and unpredictable. Each one is brief, unique, gone the moment it lands. The final diary entry reads, "Snow forgets itself the moment it touches the ground. We try not to." You close your eyes and listen. Not to the wind, not to the voices, but to the snow itself and the strange, sacred hush it leaves behind.
You wake up warm, suspiciously warm. The diary starts with cautious concern. January 31. Either spring has arrived or our stove achieved enlightenment. You sit up, blinking into the strange, humid stillness of the tent. Your sleeping bag is slightly damp, not with snowmelt, but with condensation. Outside, you can hear something new, a low plink, 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 dripping. It's above freezing. The crew stumbles from their tents in a mixture of awe and mild dread. The snow underfoot is slushy now. Your boots sink with a soft squelch. The world is melting. Not rapidly, but just enough to leave you uneasy. The explorer puts it plainly. The snow has begun its retreat. I don't trust it. There's a strange anxiety in the air. After weeks of static white, of everything being frozen, solid, predictable, the change feels like a prank. The snow is too quiet. The horizon, once sharp, now runs like watercolor. Visibility is good, but soft, like everything's wearing a gauze veil. Jenkins proposes a celebratory march, claiming this is a divine nudge forward. Hatjohn counters by falling knee-deep into a slush pocket and cursing divinity in 5 languages. The dogs tread carefully. They too are wary. Breakfast is warm and spongy, hardtack softened overnight by tent condensation. It's almost edible. Jenkins declares it pudding. No one corrects him. The explorer is contemplative today. His writing is slower, more spaced out. We are taught to dread the cold, but it's the thaw that surprises us. The team makes cautious progress across the landscape. The sleds slide less smoothly now, sinking slightly with every dozen paces. You reroute around visibly sagging drifts and what Jenkins dramatically labels snow swamps. The dogs work harder today. You reward them with extra biscuits, half thawed in your pocket and now a little furry from your coat lining. They don't mind. Around midday, the air smells different, cleaner somehow, like stone, maybe exposed ground somewhere nearby, maybe just wishful thinking. The explorer notes, I miss the smell of dirt, real dirt, not snow's pristine lie. The group stumbles upon a ridge of black rock peeking out from the white. Everyone pauses. No one says anything for a full minute. It's not dramatic. It's not even pretty. It's just different. Unfrozen. You each take turns placing a hand on it. It's not warm, but it's not cold either. a handshake from the earth, a reminder of something buried beneath the weeks of white silence. Jenkins takes a small pebble from the base of the ridge and slips it into his mitten. He says, "A souvenir." "You make no jokes." The explorer's tone turns tender. "We've touched something older than ice today, and it didn't turn away." Camp is made just beneath the rocky ridge. The wind is still quiet, but water drips softly from the tarp edges. Dinner is made hastily. Everyone is damp, and the mood is more solemn than celebratory. You share a joke about the snow developing seasonal allergies. It lands halfway. The warmth, the welcome, has unsettled everyone. That night, you lie in your sleeping bag feeling too warm, too sticky. You miss the crispness, the clarity of frost. You feel the shift coming, and you're not sure you're ready for it. The final diary line for the day reads, "The world is waking up. I hope we still know how to walk in it." Outside, the drip continues. The snow, once sharp-edged and eternal, begins to whisper its exit. You fall asleep wondering who you'll be when it's gone.
The first thing you notice this morning is the sound of slush under someone's boot. A slow, wet squish that echoes in a way that makes your skin crow slightly. There's no elegance to it, just gravity and surrender. The diary begins with restrained revulsion. February 1. The snow has become pudding. Our boots have opinions. You rise reluctantly. Everything is damp. Not soaked yet, but sticky with melt, the kind that clings to wool and skin and patience. The tents sag slightly under the weight of thawing layers. The stove sputters with extra steam. Jenkins declares it stealthy soup weather. No one asks what that means. The explorer writes, "Once we feared the cold. Now we fear the thaw. We are never satisfied." Outside, the snow has become a mess of textures. Hard patches, soggy drifts, surprising sinkholes. What used to be a predictable crunch is now an unreliable squelch. You watch Hat John step confidently forward, only to disappear mid-calf into a pocket of liquefied snow. His expression suggests betrayal. The dogs are slower today. Their paws sink deeper. They pad forward with exaggerated care. One sits down and refuses to move until bribed with half a biscuit. You understand. Despite the conditions, the crew agrees to move, mostly out of necessity. The slope where you've camped is softening, and no one wants to find themselves glissading downhill in their sleep. Packing the sled is difficult. Everything is heavier when damp, straps are slick, and someone's socks have permanently fused to a rolled tarp. Jenkins claims it's an omen. I claim it's poor organization. The explorer notes, "We fought snow before. Now we're fighting water that remembers it used to be snow." The march is exhausting. Every 10 steps bring a new surprise, a hidden dip, a patch of slush, an ankle-deep hole filled with invisible meltwater. Hat John begins narrating each misstep like a tragic play. Jenkins replies in verse. You lose time quickly. Progress is slow, and morale is slippery. Lunch is skipped, partly because no one wants to sit in the slush. The explorer sketches a rough map in the diary margin titled Swamp of Mild Regrets. Around mid-afternoon, something remarkable happens. You hear running water. Faint, but real. You follow the sound to a tiny melt stream, just a trickle, threading its way between rocks. The dogs drink eagerly. The humans stare. The explorer records, once it laughed as it moved. First sound of motion we didn't cause in weeks. You fill a pot with the meltwater and boil it back at camp. It tastes different, fresher, a shock of flavorless clarity. Everyone drinks a little too quickly, as if it might vanish. Dinner is a soggy affair. The food is warm, but your fingers are too pruny to appreciate it. The stew is dubbed Swamp Surprise. It surprises no one. The dogs steal leftovers and look smug. As you settle into your damp sleeping gear, there's an unspoken mood in camp, a kind of collective shrinking. No one wants to complain, but the melt brings a creeping sense of loss. The explorer closes the day's entry with this: when the snow breaks, we're left with the truth beneath it, and it's not always solid. You lie there, listening to the drip again. But now, it feels like the tick of a clock, a reminder that everything here, even the frozen silence, is temporary. Morning brings fog. Not the light, ghostly kind that lifts by breakfast. No, this fog sits heavy and unbothered, pressing down on the world like a wool blanket left out in the rain. Visibility is laughable. Jenkins waves his hand 6 inches from his face and calls it a magic trick. No one laughs. The diary opens grimly. February 2. Visibility, poor. Mood, damp. Jenkins, smug. Standard conditions. You step outside and are immediately swallowed. Even the dogs bark cautiously, short, echoless yelps into a white nothingness that gives nothing back. Button barks once, then curls into herself like a spool of doubt. The explorer captures the mood precisely. We do not fear what we cannot see. We simply resent it. There's no talk of moving today. Camp remains where it is, cocooned in condensation. You busy yourself with small tasks, scraping ice off cookware, retightening rope loops, checking your boots for structural integrity and small, evolving life forms. The crew spreads out, but not far. You keep close enough to hear each other breathe, the fog distorting voices into cotton-wrapped murmurs. Jenkins tells a story about fog spirits that steal voices. You immediately shush him. Hat John attempts to locate the sleds by shouting, "Sled!" into the void. The sleds do not respond. The dogs look at him with slow, mutual disappointment. The diary remarks, "We did not get lost. The world simply forgot where we were." Lunch is eaten standing. Hard biscuits and some cheese that has definitely gone philosophical. It smells like loneliness and old ambition. You chew thoughtfully while pretending it's smoked. Later, someone discovers that sound travels strangely in the fog. You hear a bark from behind and turn, but it's actually to the left. Jenkins tries to exploit this for ambiance. The dogs ignore him. You entertain yourselves by measuring how far you can walk before you vanish. The answer? 6 steps. Jenkins suggests attaching ropes to everyone, like a kindergarten line. He is voted down with a snowball to the chest. The explorer, oddly contemplative, reflects. We did not speak of fear today. We spoke only of orientation. The difference is survival. Evening falls, though it's hard to tell. The fog simply thickens, changing color from light gray to navy to near black. The stove is a beacon now, its glow warped and smeared into the air like a painted sun. Dinner is lentils, again. Someone tries adding crushed cracker for texture. The result is upsetting. The explorer writes, Texture should be earned, not invented. Afterward, Jenkins reads from the back of a ration tin, imitating a Shakespearean actor. Hat John counters by quoting the stove's instruction label in perfect iambic pentameter. You nearly choke on tea. As the group settles into the damp hush of night, you hear the fog drip softly onto the tent, each droplet a punctuation mark on an invisible sentence. It's neither peaceful nor menacing, just there. The explorer ends today's entry on a whispered note. We are ghosts to each other today, but we stayed visible to ourselves. That will do. And you sleep, not knowing what tomorrow looks like, literally, but comforted that at the very least, your people are 6 steps away.
The fog has lifted, but only to make room for its ruder cousin, sleet. You wake to the sound of it slapping against the tent like thrown porridge. Jenkins describes it as sky spitting sideways. Accurate. Less poetic than usual, but accurate. The diary starts with restrained fury. February 3. The sky is arguing with itself. We are collateral drizzle. There's nothing elegant about sleet. It's not majestic like snow, nor thrilling like wind, nor even satisfyingly dramatic like a blizzard. It's petty. It clings to your coat, seeps through the seams, soaks your gloves just enough to be noticeable, then it freezes again for fun. The explorer observes, rain that forgot how to be warm, snow that regrets being pretty. Breakfast is eaten under a sagging tarp. The sleet bounces off it with a sound like 1,000 tiny complaints. You chew your ration bar in solidarity. The dogs are miserable. They do their business quickly and return to their piles of gear with moody huffs. Button burrows beneath a crate and refuses to emerge. Milo tries to eat sleet off Jenkins' sleeve and looks immediately betrayed. Despite the weather, the crew attempts minor tasks. The sleds are checked, gear is repacked, a sock with 3 holes is finally retired with full honors. Jenkins offers a eulogy. Hat John lowers it ceremonially into a snowbank. Movement is impossible. The ground is too slick, too soupy. One attempt to reposition the sled ends with Hat John on his back and the sled merrily sliding 20 feet in the wrong direction. The explorer notes, velocity was achieved, purpose was not. The day becomes a waiting game. You wrap yourself in layers, sip tepid tea, and watch as the sleet turns the world into a watercolor wash of gray and brown. The horizon dissolves again. Jenkins names the color palette Regret Fog. Lunch is hot broth, made with more water than usual just to feel like it belongs in this weather. It's thin but warm. You cradle it like a newborn mistake. The explorer writes, some days meals are not about fullness, just confirmation of existence. Afternoon passes in soggy silence. The stove stutters, offended by the wet air. You lean in anyway, letting the weak heat fight its losing battle against the sleet chill. To pass time, someone starts a round of, if you were home right now. Answers include, a bath, a real one, with steam, cheese with a knife on a plate, not explaining what pemmican is for the 40th time. Jenkins says, I'd be here again, but with more socks. Everyone groans, but quietly. Dinner is simple. Potato mush. It's reheated from a previous day, which is now considered a culinary technique. The diary records flavor inherited, texture historic, calories confirmed. Later, you watch sleet bead on the tent flap, forming rivulets that slither downward like punctuation. The dogs are quiet. The wind isn't loud, just there, persistent. The final diary line reads, We do not ask the sky for kindness anymore. We simply ask it to pick a texture and commit. You settle in damp but dry enough. You feel everything today. Cold in your knees, warmth in your fingers, hunger in your ribs. But most of all, you feel the weight of just getting through. And for today, that's more than enough.
You wake to silence again, but not the familiar, gentle quiet of snowfall or calm wind. This silence is anticipatory, heavy, as though the sky is holding its breath, waiting to decide what to do with you. The diary opens with a single sentence. February 4. The weather forgot us today. We are not sure if it's a gift. You crawl out of your sleeping bag and notice two things. First, the sleet has stopped. Second, everything is encased in a smooth, brittle shell of ice. The world has been lacquered overnight. The tent is crisp to the touch. The sleds gleam ominously. Jenkins slips on the ground before he even finishes yawning. The explorer writes, dryly, "The world polished itself to impress us. We're flattered, also bruised." The dogs approach the morning with the cautious steps of animals who know betrayal. They move slowly, placing their paws as if choosing ice cubes from a tray. You do the same. Hat John proclaims it rest day by force. No one argues. Breakfast consists of barely thawed mush, scraped from a tin and served on bread that has developed a philosophical crunch. Jenkins claims to taste cinnamon. He's wrong. Today is a maintenance day. Not because anyone planned it, but because nothing else can be done. You spend time chiseling ice off tent lines, loosening frozen knots, checking boots for signs of mutiny. The explorer notes, cold we can handle, but wet then frozen, that's personal. One of the sled runners has fused slightly to the ground. Two people attempt to lift it, while the third offers advice. Jenkins offers tea. The sled stays frozen. You huddle around the stove again. The stove has become more than just a tool. It's a mood stabilizer, a spiritual leader. You feed it slivers of wood and scraps of confidence. In return, it gurgles kindly. Lunch is delayed due to emotional weather. The sky remains flat. The wind returns in short bursts, just long enough to blow a page of Jenkins' notebook into a snowdrift. He retrieves it dramatically. It's a haiku about dry socks. It survives. The afternoon is passed in quiet repairs and quieter thoughts. Someone unpacks the spare gearbox and discovers a single glove, a dented cup, and a tin of mustard. The mustard is passed around like perfume. You all take a deep inhale. No one opens it. The explorer reflects. A man can survive on air and memory longer than food. The mustard reminded us of sandwiches. Hat John whittles a spoon. He says it's for luck. The old spoon is fine, but no one questions it. The new spoon is misshapen, but full of purpose. Jenkins sketches the camp, capturing it in awkward lines and hopeful shading. It looks like a pile of debris on the moon. You tell him it's beautiful. It is. Dinner is surprisingly good. Lentils, dried onion, and a dash of pepper from the emergency tin. It's warm, thick, and eaten slowly. The dogs are quiet, but attentive. Later, as darkness descends with its usual indifference, someone lights the lantern early. It casts a golden circle of light in the tent, softening the harshness of canvas and cold. The explorer closes the day with this. We are no longer surprised by hardship. We are only surprised by softness. You wrap yourself tightly, the spoon in your pocket for no reason at all. The tent creaks, the stove hums, and somewhere outside, the ice begins to melt again slowly, whispering promises it may or may not keep.
You wake before the others, not because of a storm or thirst or Jenkins tripping over the stove again, but because of the light. Actual light. Pale, clear, stretching gently across the tent walls like a hand brushing frost from a window. The diary begins softly. February 5. Light arrived early.
It did not knock. You step outside into a world transformed. The ice has receded. The snow has softened. Above, a faint sun, a real one this time, hangs like a distant lantern, casting gold across the white. The sky is eggshell blue, streaked with peach and cloud. The silence is still here, but it's no longer heavy. It's awake. The dogs stir one by one, blinking against the brightness. They stretch with the satisfaction of creatures who know they've earned another day. Jenkins emerges, squints, and says, "Well, we didn't die. That's always a strong start." The explorer writes, "No great epiphany today. Just a sense that something is ending. Or beginning." You take down the tents slowly, not from exhaustion, but reverence. Every snap of a rope, every fold of fabric feels like turning the last pages of a well-worn book. The sleds are lighter now, partly from diminished rations, partly from knowledge that the hardest days may be behind you, or at least not pressing down so hard today. You march across snow that sighs beneath your boots. The sun climbs gently. For the first time, your shadows follow behind you with shape. Jenkins says they look thinner. You pretend to be insulted. The explorer notes, "We used to drag our burdens across the ice. Now they float a little." At mid-morning, you pause on a low ridge. Below lies a vast, glittering plain of snow, untouched, but no longer threatening. You take turns guessing what lies beyond. No one's right, but everyone's hopeful. Lunch is symbolic. The final strip of dried meat, 2 biscuits, and a spoonful of jam that somehow survived in the deepest corner of a pack. It savored like a first course at a banquet. The dogs licked their bowls clean twice. Later, you stumble upon another relic, half-buried wood, rusted wire, and a bent metal plate. Perhaps a depot, perhaps just forgotten trash. But even that feels important, like someone else once passed this way and left you a note in the form of debris. The explorer muses, "The trail ends, the trail resumes. No one ever walks alone out here, even when they do." Camp is pitched one final time. There's no speech, no ceremony, just efficient gestures. Tents staked, dogs fed, stew stirred with the quiet skill of people who now know snow, ice, silence, and each other more intimately than they ever intended.
Dinner is the last of the lentils, and the surprise, a small, crumpled tin of tea, forgotten in the bottom of the gear crate. Jenkins brews it like a wizard, and you sip it from mismatched cups. The taste is faint, but warm, like holding hands with a memory. The final diary entry reads, "We lived here, briefly, not just survived. We sang. We argued over spoons. We named the snowdrifts. I will miss the ridiculous beauty of it all." And with that, the pages end. You close the diary gently and lie back, listening to the wind, mild now, almost friendly. The tent dims as night comes, but you don't feel lost. You feel held. The stove crackles once more. The fabric of the tent rustles softly overhead. Your body, wrapped in warmth and the last glow of a long day, begins to relax. Outside, the snow has stopped its performance. No flurries, no sleet, no whispered complaints. Just stillness. A kind, steady hush that settles across the landscape like a thick wool blanket. The dogs have curled into each other, their steady breathing a rhythm that anchors the world. Someone coughs lightly. Someone hums, almost unconsciously. The lantern casts slow shadows on the canvas walls. Nothing scary, nothing sharp. Just light playing with silence. And you sink a little deeper. The aches in your back dull into a hum. The stiffness in your fingers softens. Your heartbeat slows, sinking with the slow exhale of your breath. You've been to the edge of cold, of quiet, of nothing, and found not fear, but stillness. Found not absence, but gentleness. Found, oddly, yourself. The sky outside is ink black now, and the stars have returned, scattered like breadcrumbs over the dome of the world. You see them through a gap in the tent flap. They do not blink. They simply watch, as they always have. And here you are, a body in a sleeping bag, a mind full of snowdrifts and soup and dogs, named Button. Held by cold, cradled by calm. You are warm. You are safe. You may close your eyes now. Sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.